Well, hello there. Omni-Sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in Marvel with Adam Eve's Powers, Part 3. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
In the grass field behind the Xavier mansion, Logan and Wyatt could be seen standing in front of one another. Wyatt was dressed in loose workout gear, while Logan wore jeans and a white tank top. Their forms couldn't be more different. Wyatt was sweaty, bruised, and bloodied, while Logan looked fresh and free of any injury. Several feet away, several observers sat around the pool and watched the ongoing training session. Or if you asked Kurt, Evan, Kitty, and Rogue, they would tell you it was more of a torture lesson. "Come on, Wyatt. I know you can do better than that," Logan said as he rolled his shoulders. He slid into a loose fighting stance and beckoned Wyatt on. "Show me what New York's great hero can do." Wyatt frowned at the jab and shook off any exhaustion or pain he had accumulated over the last 2 hours and slid into his own stance. "Be careful what you ask for, Mr. Logan." With an explosive push off the ground, Wyatt surged forward. He unleashed a flurry of precise punches and swift kicks at Logan, each strike echoing with intent. Unlike the chaotic flailing of 4 months prior, Wyatt's movements now flowed with purpose and control, honed through countless hours of dedicated training. Under Logan's expert guidance in hand-to-hand combat, Wyatt was steadily transforming into a formidable opponent. "Good. Stay on your toes and keep your head on a swivel," Logan said as he slapped, parried, and weaved out of the way of Wyatt's attacks. The Wolverine's centuries of harsh combat experience, including several wars, battles against other mutants, and countless near-death situations, had given him extensive knowledge of fighting. When Wyatt had asked him to teach him, Logan didn't hesitate to agree. He felt a sense of obligation to Wyatt for extracting the adamantium from his skeleton. No longer hampered by the poisonous metal, Logan was now much faster and more agile. His already heightened senses had grown even stronger as well. He was at his peak. That and the $2,000 barrel of aged smoked whiskey Wyatt had offered in exchange only sweetened the deal. As Wyatt attacked, he felt his breathing start to get out of control, but he quickly implemented one of Logan's breathing exercises. After a few seconds, his lungs were moving quickly yet remained under control. Jumping into the air, he aimed to slam his foot into the side of Logan's head, but Logan managed to grab him by his ankle. Wyatt's eyes widened in pain as Logan slammed his fist into his stomach. "What did I tell you about those flashy kicks? If they're not absolutely perfect, they'll be the death of you," Logan said, watching as a coughing and heaving Wyatt rolled around on the ground. "And noted," Wyatt managed to say through his coughing fit. "I don't remember Logan's training being this intense," Kurt said as he winced sympathetically at Wyatt's pain. "That's because Wyatt asked Logan not to hold back," Evan said, shaking his head. "The fool. Brave, but still a fool. Still, he's made a lot of progress that way. Before, he would get knocked out after 2 minutes of training with Logan," Rogue remarked, watching Wyatt as he stood up, his eyes hard and full of determination. She smiled faintly at the sight and chuckled as she noticed Kitty watching on red-faced. "That girl has it bad," Rogue thought. "I'm good, let's keep going," Wyatt said, raising his fists. "No, let's change it up," Logan replied, turning to Scott, who was walking out of the mansion dressed in workout clothing. "You need a sparring partner at your skill level. The best experience in combat is combat itself. Fighting me won't help you grow as much as an opponent around your level." Scott frowned, feeling that Logan's comment suggested he and Wyatt were at comparable skill levels. While he acknowledged Wyatt's feats and accomplishments as atomic, Scott believed they were largely due to Wyatt's overpowered abilities. So, when Logan asked him to spar with Wyatt, Scott was more than willing to demonstrate what actual skill looked like to the reality warper. Well, this should be interesting, Wyatt thought as he and Scott stood a few feet apart. He had noticed Scott giving him the stink eye for the past few weeks, and he guessed that Scott was eagerly awaiting for a chance like this. Over the past few months, Wyatt had worked hard to maintain a healthy work-life balance. In his free time, he made sure to make plans and spend time with his friends. Whether it was cozy afternoons at the library with Gwen, Peter, and Harry, where they delved into their favorite books, or thrilling movie nights filled with popcorn, snacks, and discussions about their favorite scenes. Initially, Wyatt worried that not being a mutant, like everyone else, would create distance between him and the Xavier crew. However, He quickly realized that his friends weren't as shallow as he had feared. Despite his lack of an X gene, everyone welcomed him with open arms. This fact made Charles proud of his students' open-mindedness. It was a clear demonstration that, despite the differences among mutants, enhanced individuals, and regular humans, everyone could one day coexist. In addition, Charles had told Wyatt that he was always welcome at his institution, recognizing Wyatt's heroic nature and strong moral character. With Charles's permission, Wyatt used his powers and programming knowledge to create an impressive play area in the mansion. This achievement earned him a great deal of respect and appreciation from both his original group of friends and the newer mutants. Thanks to his abilities, whenever Wyatt visited the mansion, everyone was eager to hang out with him. Who wouldn't want to be around someone who could create anything out of thin air? However, he was careful not to indulge everyone with free stuff. Wyatt had received guidance not only from Logan but also from Aurora and Hank McCoy, also now known as Beast. Beast connected with Wyatt quickly due to their shared love of science and high intellect. Whenever Wyatt wasn't training with Logan or Aurora or hanging out with his friends, he was engaged in conversations and debates with Beast. Despite the high opinion everyone in the mansion had of Wyatt, Scott couldn't shake his suspicions. Ever since the party when someone had broken into the mansion and the revelation that Wyatt wasn't a mutant, Scott remained on edge around him. While he recognized that Wyatt had done a great deal of good for New York, something in his gut told him that Wyatt could potentially lead everyone into trouble. Until he was completely sure of Wyatt's intentions, Scott resolved to keep an eye on him and ensure he didn't harm any of his fellow mutants. Omen, here it is. Kurt and Evan exclaimed in excitement. This can only end well, Kitty said as she and Rogue stood up. They were acutely aware of Scott's issues with Wyatt and speculated that Scott's behavior stemmed from either insecurity or jealousy toward Wyatt. You two ready? Logan asked, seeing both young men in their fighting stances. I am, Scott said. Yup. Wyatt nodded. All right, remember, no abilities. Now fight. Logan shouted, motioning for them to begin. Scott rushed in, launching several punches at Wyatt. Wyatt, opting for a more defensive approach, parried and weaved in and out of Scott's strikes. This exchange lasted for several 10 seconds until Scott finally landed a clean backhand to Wyatt's face. Wyatt groaned, ducked under a wide right punch, and slammed an open palm into Scott's stomach, causing him to stumble back. Stepping in, Wyatt spun and landed a hook kick to Scott's head, who raised his guard just in time to block the attack with a hiss. Dropping to the ground, Scott spun and kicked Wyatt's legs out from under him with a sweep kick. As Wyatt landed on his back, his breath escaped his lungs, but he ignored the pain and rolled to the side just as Scott slammed his foot down. Men, they're really going at it, Kurt said as Wyatt locked Scott's legs and yanked him down. The two began to exchange punches as they rolled around on the ground. Some of those hits looked personal. Ouch. That one has to sting. Evan winced as Wyatt landed a solid punch to Scott's nose. I don't think this is a spar anymore. This is a fight, Rogue remarked as Kitty anxiously paced back and forth, watching as Wyatt's head snapped back from a kick. Logan. Stop this already. This isn't training anymore. Kitty shouted as she and everyone else rushed up to their teacher, who was watching the brawl with a calm expression. Not yet. Those two need to get whatever is going on between them out of their systems, Logan replied as everyone continued to watch both young men punch, kick, and throw each other. This continued on until they were both breathless. All right, that's it. What the hell is your problem with me? Wyatt growled, blood running down his nose. Pulling his arm back, he crashed his fist into Scott's cheek, making Scott spit out a glob of blood. My problem. You're my problem. Scott hissed, landing an uppercut to Wyatt's stomach. You're not one of us. So why are you still here? That's what this is about? Wyatt said, grabbing Scott by his shirt. Pulling Scott's head back, he slammed his forehead into Scott's. You've got to be kidding me. What does it matter if I have the X gene or not? Everything. Scott yelled, his built-up emotions crashing to the surface. He moved forward and shoved Wyatt back. The two stood apart, panting heavily. You don't have to worry about being persecuted for something beyond your control. How many mutants get taken away by the government for no other crime than existing? And what do you do about it, hero? You fly all over the city, but not once have I seen you stop those fascists from taking my people away. Are we not worthy of help like everyone else, or are you just blind to it all? Wyatt took an unconscious step back, staring at Scott with wide eyes. No, it's just, I don't want to hear it. I'm done, Scott said, walking back into the mansion and ignoring the worried looks from his teammates. Scott! Rogue yelled, glancing back and forth between Scott and Wyatt. Ultimately, she decided to follow him in hopes of offering support. Scott, wait. Wyatt stood still, the weight of Scott's words deeply affecting him. He wanted to argue that Scott was wrong, but he couldn't help but agree. He hadn't done anything to help the mutants being taken by the government. Yes, he hadn't encountered such situations yet, but he also could have tried harder to reach out. He knew what they were going through, but he had been so caught up in his own missions that he never paused to consider how he might be able to help the mutants in need. Wyatt, are you okay? Kitty asked as she ran to his side. She reached out and placed a hand on his arm. Hey, don't listen to him. He's under a lot of stress. He didn't mean what he said. No, he did mean it. And he's not wrong, Wyatt replied, surprising everyone around him. Mr. Logan, what do you think? Should I be doing more? Logan sighed and glanced over at the mansion, where Charles sat, no doubt having paid attention to the confrontation from his office. Listen, kid. You're doing a lot of good as Atomic. You have more responsibilities than any other 16-year-old should have. The issues we mutants face aren't your responsibility. They're ours, the X-Men, to handle. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's more than enough. Wyatt blinked and looked down at his bruised and bloodied hands. The stares from his friends weighed heavily on him as he contemplated Logan's words. No, there's always more I can do. Wyatt thought resolutely. There has to be. The streets of Harlem were bustling as usual. People from all walks of life were moving along the sidewalks, heading to work, school, or simply out for a stroll. Wyatt, dressed in a black and red hoodie and pants, walked alongside the residents of this historically rich neighborhood with dark bags under his eyes. Note to self, get more sleep. Wyatt thought as he let out a yawn. Ever since his confrontation with Scott, Wyatt had thrown himself into his work. He was spending more time as Atomic than Wyatt, barely managing to get 5 hours of sleep for the last week. Shit. I can't keep going on like this. I'm not him. I can try all I want to be like him, but I'm just human. Sure, a human with reality warping powers, but I'm not a Kryptonian with unlimited stamina and power. Wyatt thought. So why am I trying so hard? I'm not the only hero around. Can't I just step back and focus on myself? When he reached his destination, Wyatt looked up at the newly opened soul food restaurant, which had been built where Luigi's Pizzeria once stood. He peered inside and saw several hungry patrons enjoying meals with their families. Behind the counter, a kind-looking woman named Mary smiled as she rang up a young couple. Mary and her husband Jackson were the owners of the restaurant, having bought it from Serena. They had been friends with Luigi since their late 20s. Thanks to Luigi, Jackson gathered the courage to propose to Mary. For them, continuing to serve food in the place their old friend had built was a way to preserve his memory. They even added a few of Luigi's pizzas to their menu. Since Luigi's funeral and Serena's departure, Wyatt felt compelled to walk through the streets of Harlem each week to visit the restaurant. On several occasions, he had wanted to step inside, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Failing to gather the courage once again, Wyatt turned around and left. No, I can't. If I stop helping, then what about the people who need my Atomic's help? I can't let what happened to my parents, Luigi, and Serena happen to anyone else. Not if I can help it. I have to keep going. I have to. Isn't that why I'm here? Wyatt thought and shook his head to remove the fatigue clouding his mind. As Wyatt walked, he took in the sights of the lively local shops and businesses. He had to step aside as a few children ran past him. To his mild surprise, he noticed that the kids' shirts displayed the Atomic logo. One little boy even had a small action figure and made swooshing noises as he pretended the toy was flying through the air. Looks like my merchandise has reached Harlem, too. Wyatt thought as he examined the streets closely. Although not overly visible, several posters and items featured Atomic in various shops and store windows. Much like how one could find Iron Man and scattered Captain America merchandise throughout the city, Wyatt's own merchandise was growing in popularity. It had started in small batches in random shops. Still, following the surge in Atomic's popularity after the events of the Stark Expo, it was hard for Wyatt to go anywhere without seeing his likeness somewhere. Some people might have felt annoyed that others were profiting from their likeness, but Wyatt didn't mind. If he wanted money, he could just create a mountain of riches whenever he pleased. Whoosh! Whoosh! A small child with an Iron Man toy said as he chased his friend, who held a toy of Atomic. I shot you with my blasts. Nah. I created a force field around me. No fair. I said no shields. Wyatt chuckled as the kids raced into a small park around the corner. However, his smile faded at the sight of the dilapidated park. He approached the fence and observed the children playing, trying to enjoy the park as best as they could. It was evident that the park had seen better days. You know, back in the day, this park was buzzing with energy. Kids would swing and laugh without a care in the world, the man in the hat said with a warm smile. He settled comfortably in his fold-out wooden chair, a chess set neatly arranged in front of him. I'm Bobby Fish, by the way. It's great to finally meet you. I've noticed you strolling through here every week, and I just had to find out your name, youngman. He gestured to the empty chair across from him, invitingly. I'm Wyatt Wilkins. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Fish, Wyatt said after a second and took the seat. Chess. Sure. Tell me, Wyatt, what has you wandering through these streets with such a lost look? Bobby said as he moved his pawn, with Wyatt moving his own in turn. My friends have said I have a good ear. Wyatt smiled slightly and moved his knight after Bobby moved his bishop. You ever been to Luigi's Pizzeria? Luigi's? Who hasn't? That man made the best pizza in the city. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. But what happened to that man was a real tragedy, Bobby said with a frown. Did you know him? Yeah, I did. He was a good man. Fed me when times were hard, and his daughter ended up becoming my closest friend, Wyatt said. I guess. I can't stay away from the old restaurant. I understand, Wyatt. It's true that Mary and Jackson aren't Luigi, but they whip up a delicious mac and cheese that I can't resist. I find myself going there every day for lunch. You know what really touches my heart? They had a talented neighborhood girl create a beautiful mural of Luigi on the back wall. It's a lovely tribute. Even though Luigi is no longer with us, his spirit and the good memories we all had at his restaurant continue to thrive in that place. No matter who's behind the counter. Moving his rook piece, Wyatt smiled faintly at the mention of Luigi's mural. You know, you're the second person to remind me that just because someone is gone, it's not really the end. Thanks, Mr. Fish. Oh, and checkmate. Bobby blinked in confusion as he examined the chessboard, trying to figure out how he had been beaten. Wyatt stood up and smiled at Bobby. Thanks for the game and talk, Mr. Fish. We should do this again someday. I usually play chess at Marcus Garvey Park, so if you ever want to play again, I'll be there, Bobby said with a smile as he turned back to the park. Maybe one day the city will help rebuild this park. Wouldn't that be something to see? Wyatt turned to the park and nodded. Yeah, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. I'm sure someone will come along and help. Hurry up. We have to get home, or Mom will get mad at us. I know, but I can't leave Atomic. The two brothers, who had been playing at the park earlier that day, could be seen running through the streets of Harlem. Wearing an Atomic t-shirt, Henry had forgotten his precious toy halfway home and immediately returned to retrieve it. His twin brother, Jordan, nervously followed. The sun was beginning to set, and they needed to hurry to make it home before their curfew. Henry smiled as he spotted the park coming into view and dashed through the old rusty gates. The two brothers searched the park quickly for the toy, unaware of how much time had passed. Should you two be out this late? Henry and Jordan jumped in surprise, finally noticing that the only light illuminating the park came from a single lamppost in the center of the playground. They looked around nervously for the owner of the voice but found no one. Then, Henry looked up and gasped as he saw Atomic floating in the air. No way. Atomic. Henry's face had broken into a large smile as Jordan gasped in awe. Atomic nodded and landed on the ground. He pressed a foot onto the ground and sent a pulse through the park. After a second, He walked over to a bush and pulled out Henry's lost toy. Was this what you two were looking for? Atomic asked as he kneeled in front of the brothers, holding out the toy for them to take. Why yes, sir, Jordan said, trying to remember the manners his mother taught them. Henry, without any hesitation, moved forward and grabbed his toy. I'm Henry. I'm your biggest fan. Oh, this is my brother, Jordan, Henry said, practically jumping. It's nice to meet you too. Still, you two shouldn't stay out so late. It can get dangerous for two kids like you, Atomic said and stood up. I'll walk you two home. But first. Holding out his hand, Atomic unleashed a dazzling wave of energy that flooded the park with a radiant light, capturing the attention of pedestrians and curious onlookers peering from nearby windows. When the light faded, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The once old and dilapidated park had been revitalized into a vibrant oasis teeming with life and color. The new play structure sparkled under the light, showcasing the latest designs that promised endless fun for children of all ages. Brightly colored swings swayed gently in a newly constructed play area, and slides glistened invitingly, beckoning children to explore. Surrounding this lively hub, the greenery flourished with renewed vigor. Lush, well-manicured bushes adorned the edges, while tall trees stood proudly, their leaves a vivid shade of emerald, rustling softly in the gentle breeze. The solitary light pole that had once cast a dim glow over the park was now accompanied by several more, standing like sentinels to illuminate the newly revamped space. Together, their warm light spilled across the grounds, creating a welcoming atmosphere that invited families to gather and enjoy. As the last remnants of Atomic's power faded away, a pristine, up-to-code park was left in its wake, ready to be filled with laughter and joy. That was awesome, Henry and Jordan said as they looked around their new park. They were eager to play in it, but the dark skies above them stopped them. They knew they were way past curfew and had to hurry home. You two will have plenty of opportunities to play. Let's focus on getting home for now, okay? Atomic said as he walked along with Henry and Jordan. Okay. The brothers said in slight disappointment but were still excited to have a superhero walk them home. As the trio ambled through the bustling streets, they drew a myriad of bewildered stares and curious glances from passersby. It was a rare spectacle to witness a larger-than-life superhero in such an unassuming setting, especially one escorting two children home. Atomic tried his best to keep up with the barrage of questions from the two boys, their faces lit up with excitement. Why do you wear that helmet? One inquired, while the other asked about his superpowers. Meanwhile, Atomic waved cheerfully at those around him. Even the more hardened individuals who typically roamed the streets at night found themselves straightening up, momentarily entranced by the presence of a hero in their midst. As they rounded the corner, the three came upon a quaint townhouse that boasted a welcoming air. Its light-colored bricks were softened by a blooming garden, and the scent of freshly cut grass hung in the air. Standing at the doorstep was a woman whose face was initially etched with worry. However, the moment her gaze met that of her two sons, her anxious expression melted away like morning mist, replaced by a radiant smile that illuminated her warm features. There you two boys are. You had me worried sick. What did I tell you about getting home before sundown? The boy's mother, Keisha, said with an angry but relieved expression. I almost called the police because of you. It's okay, Mom. Look, Atomic walked us home. Henry said and pointed to Atomic, who had gone unnoticed by Keisha. Keisha's eyes grew wide as she finally noticed the hero. You're Atomic. The real one. Yes, ma'am. Atomic nodded and hovered slightly above the ground to demonstrate. I hope you don't mind that I walked your boys home. I felt it was best for them not to walk alone. Oh, not at all. It's perfectly fine. Thank you, I really appreciate you looking out for my boys. Keisha smiled, gently placing her hands on her sons' heads. But I will make sure they remember to follow their curfew. I'm sure you will. All right, you two, listen to your mother and get home before dark. Okay. Atomic said to the two excited children. Yes, sir. You got it, Atomic. Atomic nodded, a glimmer of determination in his eyes, and began to ascend higher into the night sky, his form becoming silhouetted against the vast expanse of stars. With a final, sweeping wave of his hand, he soared into the darkness, leaving the crowd below in a hushed, reverent silence their faces illuminated by the moonlight. The following day, a remarkable transformation swept through Harlem. Residents awoke to find their parks, playgrounds, and sports courts, once familiar and aged, had undergone an enchanting metamorphosis. Brightly painted murals adorned the playgrounds, vibrant flowers burst forth in colorful patches across the grass, and the courts gleamed with new life, glistening under the sun. Bewilderment filled the air as people roamed through the newly revitalized spaces, marveling at the unexpected beauty surrounding them. Yet, for those who had witnessed Atomic glide through their streets, there was a shared understanding. They knew that he was the architect of this extraordinary change, the undeniable force behind the magic that now enveloped their community. Atomic landed on the rooftop of an apartment complex and took in the sights of Harlem. He had spent most of the night upgrading several sections of the neighborhood and felt a bit tired. Despite this fatigue, helping the young twins and the larger community had eased some of Atomic's worries and lingering guilt. "I wonder why you choose to use your abilities this way. You have so much power, yet you choose to help these humans." Atomic frowned and turned around to see a beautiful woman with caramel skin emerging from the shadows of a water tower. Without warning, her form shifted to that of a red-haired woman with blue skin. Mystique. Atomic thought, as several more figures leaped onto the rooftop. They were members of the Brotherhood of Mutants. Avalanche, also known as Lance Alvars, was behind her with a determined stride. His presence exuded a quiet intensity, the ground subtly trembling under his feet. Suddenly, with agile finesse, Toad, or Todd Tolinsky, leaped from the edge of a nearby rooftop, gracefully landing on all fours like a sprightly frog. Just seconds later, a blur of silver flashed by as Quicksilver, the quick-witted Pietro Maximoff, zoomed into view, his signature cocky grin only enhancing his already striking appearance. Finally, with an earth-shattering crash, the blob, Frederick J. Dukes, emerged from behind a crumbled brick wall, his massive form striking a formidable silhouette against the debris, a testament to his sheer strength. Walking behind the blob with a smirk was Pyro, St. John Allardyce. The flamethrowers attached to his upper body clicked, releasing small bursts of flame that began to float around him. "You're a very hard man to find, Atomic," Mystique said as she walked up beside him with a sultry smile. She leaned in and whispered beside Atomic's helmet, "Or should I say, Wyatt Wilkins? Let's talk, shall we?" "You're a very hard man to find, Atomic," Mystique said as she walked up beside him with a sultry smile. She leaned in and whispered beside Atomic's helmet, "Or should I say, Wyatt Wilkins? Let's talk, shall we?" How does she know my name? The thought ricocheted in Atomic's mind, sparking surprise and confusion. He paused to weigh the possibilities. Then it dawned on him, wait a minute, the break-in at the Xavier mansion. Could Charles have kept my information hidden away somewhere? The pieces began to fit together, forming a chilling picture. I see. It was Mystique who had infiltrated the mansion that night, using Weber as her pawn to breach Cerebro and steal whatever information Charles had stored within it. Damn it! Atomic swiped his finger, creating a glowing platform beneath Mystique's feet. The platform swiftly carried her back to stand in front of her allies. Before anyone could attack, Mystique raised her hand to calm everyone down. "The Brotherhood of Mutants," Atomic stated. He had heard various stories from his friends at the Xavier Institute about their confrontations with this universe's Brotherhood. While the group wasn't yet at the same level of danger as their comic or movie counterparts, they were not to be dismissed. "I see that Charles and his students have talked to you about us. Just know that not everything you've heard is true," Mystique replied. "We're not here to fight. We just want to talk." "Talk? Let's speed this up and carry his unconscious body to the boss," Pietro said, attempting to run but finding himself unable to move. He looked down and saw that his feet were encased in solid steel, stuck to the roof. What the hell? Seeing this, St. John glared at Atomic and was about to unleash a wave of flames when the fireballs floating around him were suddenly extinguished. When he tried to release more flames from his flamethrower, nothing happened. He soon began to have trouble breathing as his body started to shake. The phenomenon occurred because Atomic siphoned the oxygen from the air surrounding St. John's location and significantly reduced the surrounding air temperature. This drastic environmental alteration effectively extinguished any possibility for the firewielder to conjure flames. Mystique narrowed her eyes at Atomic's quick reaction and discreet use of his powers. He was far more capable than she had anticipated. Charles and his students must have informed him of our abilities. We're at a disadvantage, she thought. No one here attacks without my say-so. Do so, and you'll face the consequences. Is that clear? The young mutants all annoyingly agreed and backed off, with Pietro glaring at Atomic as he tried to pull his feet free. Hey, you heard her. Let me go, Pietro said. "She can't breathe, it's so cold." "See," John said. He resembles a young Aaron Taylor Johnson, but he's behaving quite differently from his character in the MCU. If he's here, then where's Wanda? With a casual wave of his hand, Atomic undid Pietro's bindings, and the controlled environment around St. John shifted. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice firm but free of hostility. "Like I said, we just want to talk," Mystique said with a serious tone. "More specifically, our leader wants to speak to you." "Magneto," Atomic stated. "Then why isn't he here?" "Our leader is a very busy man. However, he eagerly hopes you agree to meet him." "And if I refuse?" "From what I've been told, your group isn't exactly trustworthy and peaceful. Especially considering how you tried to trick my friend, Rogue," Atomic said. Atomic's words hung in the air, prompting a frown to crease Mystique's features. "Hey, you're lucky we're even asking," Lance barked, stepping forward with a flash of bravado, but he quickly hesitated, caught off guard by Atomic turning his attention to him. Memories of the video of the fierce battle against the Hammer drones at the Stark Expo surged through him, stirring a mix of respect and unease. Despite his own confidence in his abilities and powers, the thought of confronting Atomic, whose abilities and skills were known across the country, made him reconsider. "I mean," he began, trailing off, unsure of how to proceed. "Enough, Avalanche," Mystique hissed. "Listen, I'm well aware of our shared history with the X-Men, but our business with you is different. We're extending a friendly hand. If you decide not to speak with our leader, we would understand." The members of the Brotherhood all turned to her with confused expressions. A fact that Atomic caught on to as well. "This will turn ugly if I refuse," Atomic thought and looked down at the apartment building they were on. If a fight breaks out, the people within it would be in danger. "I can't risk that." "Fine. Take me to Magneto. I'll hear what he has to say." Mystique looked momentarily surprised at his acceptance, but she quickly looked pleased with herself. "Excellent. Your time won't be wasted, I assure you." "We'll see about that," Atomic thought and raised a hand to Frederick. The large mutant braced himself, but at the glow behind him, he saw the brick wall he broke through be fixed in an instant. "Wow," Frederick muttered. "Holy crap. He really can make anything he wants." Todd whispered, a storm of ideas of how to become rich raging in his mind. "Like gold." Atomic ignored their chattering and created a large platform under them all. The Brotherhood watched as the platform began to float into the air with Atomic flying beside them. "Lead the way," Atomic said. "Let's hope this doesn't blow up in my face," Atomic thought as Mystique guided him. As he soared through the skies, he took meticulous care to replace any metallic components in his suit, swapping out the resilient adamantium plating and helmet for non-magnetic alternatives. He chose durable ABS plastics and lightweight carbon fiber. While these substitutions might not offer the same level of protection as the formidable metals, they were a calculated precaution, an essential adaptation in case he encountered the formidable master of magnetism in the heat of battle. It didn't take long for Atomic to arrive at the location Mystique had directed him to. As he gently set down the members of the Brotherhood, he lifted his gaze to behold the imposing silhouette of the Statue of Liberty against the twilight sky. The statue, a beacon of hope and liberty, stood in stark contrast to the tension brewing in the air around them. "Atomic, I'm pleased you decided to accept my invitation," a deep, resonant voice cut through the evening stillness, drawing Atomic's attention upward. There, silhouetted against the dark heavens, was Magneto, Eric Laneshare, his figure regal and commanding as he floated effortlessly, suspended high above the gathering below. "You've been a very busy man ever since you discovered the extent of your powers." Eric's eyes glinted with a mix of intrigue and something darker as he surveyed the scene, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the charged atmosphere. "It seems that only Magneto and Mystique know about my identity," Atomic thought. Atomic frowned from behind his helmet and flew up to float in front of Eric. They were now eye to eye. It shouldn't come as a surprise that I don't trust you, Magneto. What is it that you want? Ah, yes. Charles and his X-Men have undoubtedly filled your head with tales of our encounters. But let me be clear, I am not here to fight. I'm here to extend a powerful invitation, an invitation to join the Brotherhood of Mutants, Eric stated, confidently extending his hand. With you by our side, the future where mutants can live without fear and embrace their true freedom is not just a dream, it is a certainty within our reach. Atomic frowned, hearing that. You're a powerful man, Eric. I'm also assuming you're a well-informed man. You must know that I'm not a mutant. I don't have the X gene. A small chuckle escaped Eric. He floated over to stare out at the glowing city in the distance. That, my young friend, is where you're wrong. At least, to a degree. Like Charles, I have friends everywhere. It wasn't hard to convince a few laboratory scientists to change the results of a test. Atomic was taken aback by Eric's statement. Were the test results he received fake? Could it be that he was actually a mutant all along? You're saying, I'm a mutant? Unfortunately, that remains unconfirmed, Eric confessed, his tone revealing his intrigue. You see, your blood seems to lack the X gene. However, traces of it still exist strongly in your DNA. It's almost as if the X gene is evolving beyond its current form. Isn't that fascinating? But before my team of scientists could uncover the truth about your DNA, your blood somehow eradicated itself. It was as if it had a delayed defensive mechanism, leaving us without any biological information to analyze or explore. What? What is he talking about? So, I'm a mutant but not at the same time? That doesn't make any sense. Atomic thought, growing more annoyed. What's your point? My point is that you are one of us. You're our future. The abilities you possess are meant to help us claim our rightful place as the dominant species on this planet. We shouldn't be living in fear, treated like second-class citizens at the mercy of these humans, and dragged into government facilities just because they fear what we could become. With you on our side, we can assert ourselves as the dominant species on this planet. That's wrong. Just because mutants have powers, it doesn't make them, us, or you. Whatever. It doesn't make mutants any better than regular people. Atomic said. The people are just afraid of what they don't understand. If we can show the world that mutants are no different from regular people, and then their misguided fear will go away. Naive, just like Charles. What do you propose we do about our fellow mutants being ripped from their families and homes? Are we just going to turn a blind eye to their abduction and abuse? Ignore the reality as we're thrown into camps. Eric's voice thundered, causing the nearby Statue of Liberty to tremble with his fury. He took a moment, inhaling deeply to regain his composure and halt the shaking of the statue. I've heard of your so-called heroics, Atomic. Let me ask you plainly, when the day comes that you witness an innocent mutant being dragged away by the Department of Mutant Affairs, will you stand idly by and let it happen? Or will you take a stand, defy this oppressive regime, and become their enemy? I'd do the right thing, Atomic said without hesitation. Humans, mutants, it doesn't matter. I'd step in and help anyone in trouble. No matter who I could make an enemy of by doing so. From under his helmet, Eric smiled. I see. He then floated to the ground and approached Mystique, who had a laptop in her hands. The Brotherhood all grew nervous at Eric's presence, even Pietro, the man's son. Prove it to me, Atomic. Prove to me and everyone here that you truly are the hero you say you are. Atomic narrowed his eyes, a flicker of suspicion igniting within him as he descended to the ground. Eric gestured toward the laptop's glowing screen, urging him to look closer. When Atomic's gaze fell upon the images displayed, he paused, his breath hitching in his throat. The screen revealed a collection of grainy photographs, captured from awkward angles, showcasing a sprawling government facility shrouded in an air of foreboding. The images depicted a diverse group of people clad in drab gray jumpsuits, each emblazoned with stark, unfeeling numbers across their chests. Among them were primarily youthful faces, though interspersed were middle-aged and even elderly people. What captured Atomic's attention were the horrifying and inhumane conditions in which these people were imprisoned. Straitjackets twisted and contorted their bodies, rendering them helpless. Full metallic face masks, with only small breathing holes, obscured their features, transforming them into mere shadows of their former selves. Their hands and arms were encased in cruel, unyielding steel that restricted any semblance of movement, turning them into mere objects of confinement. The government's oppressive effort to suppress their abilities and autonomy was palpable. As the photos scrolled to reveal the slivers of space where these individuals were confined to sleep, Atomic felt a sinking despair. Small, claustrophobic rooms crafted from jagged chains, cold concrete, and unforgiving steel appeared, offering barely enough space for anyone to stretch their arms fully. The stark reality of their suffering pressed heavily upon him, and he instinctively looked down, unable to bear the weight of what he had just witnessed. "What will it be, Atomic? Will you help me free these mutants, or will you turn away from their suffering?" Eric asked. "You don't have to worry about being persecuted for something beyond your control. How many mutants get taken away by the government for no other crime than existing? And what do you do about it, hero? You fly all over the city, but not once have I seen you stop those fascists from taking my people away. Are we not worthy of help like everyone else, or are you just blind to it all?" Scott's words to him echoed loudly in Atomic's mind. The Brotherhood watched as Atomic gazed back at the laptop screen. Their uncertainty about his expression hung heavily in the air. Finally, Atomic reached out and closed the laptop screen. "Where is this facility?" Eric smiled victoriously and extended his hand toward Atomic. "Welcome to the Brotherhood. This does not mean I'm joining you. I'm only doing what needs to be done to help those people," Atomic stated, his voice unwavering. "I'll work with you this time, but let me make this clear, I don't trust you." "That is understandable. However, trust isn't necessary for us to work together to free our fellow mutants," Eric replied, nodding as he placed his hands behind his back. "By the end of our rescue operation, I believe I will have earned your trust." "I doubt that," Atomic thought as he shook Eric's hand. To him, it felt as if he were making a deal with the devil. Even with the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders, Atomic knew he had no choice. The sight of those desperate people, their faces etched with fear and hopelessness, haunted him. He could feel their pain resonating within him, a relentless tug on his conscience. Ignoring their plight was simply not an option. He couldn't turn his back on those who needed help. The consequences of his future actions were not lost on him, but in that moment, their need outweighed whatever drawback he would undoubtedly receive. In a groundbreaking announcement that has the scientific community buzzing with excitement, the brilliant Reed Richards has unveiled his ambitious plans to create a state-of-the-art spaceship designed to journey to planets beyond our moon. With federal funding secured, this highly anticipated project promises to break barriers and redefine our understanding of space travel, set to launch in just 2 to 4 years, though Richards is confidently predicting a finish in a mere 2. Christine Everhart was on the scene in front of the iconic Baxter Building, capturing the energy of the moment. She exclaims, "While some may question the audacity of such a claim, this is Reed Richards we're talking about." From his extraordinary achievements as a teen genius at just 15 years old, earning the esteemed title of prodigy, to his groundbreaking innovations at 25 that have transformed our everyday lives, Reed has consistently proven that the impossible is simply a challenge waiting to be conquered. Get ready, because the future of exploration is about to take flight. Wow! I can't believe we'll be able to travel further than the moon. Do you think we'll actually reach Mars? Just imagine all the discoveries we could make with astronauts conducting live research on a new planet. Gwen exclaimed as she, Peter, and Harry all leaned in to watch the news feed on her Stark tablet. Won't they just find red sand and rocks? How exciting is that? Harry asked as Gwen put her tablet away. The sounds of the busy mall echoed around them from the food court. Harry, that's just what's on the surface. Who knows what else Mars could hold? Maybe an answer to all human disease. Peter said with an excited smile. What do you think, Wyatt? Wyatt. Ha. Wyatt blinked and looked away from his fries. Sorry. I was lost in thought. What did you say? Gwen leaned forward with a spark of enthusiasm in her eyes, her voice brimming with excitement. We were discussing Reed Richards' incredible planned spaceship, she began, her tone animated. Can you believe it? If he succeeds, the spaceship could travel far beyond our moon, venturing into the depths of space where few have dared to go. Just imagine the possibilities. The worlds it could explore, the mysteries it could uncover. Isn't that thrilling? Wyatt hummed thoughtfully as he reflected on the topic. Well, going off of Reed Richards' impressive track record of accomplishments, him developing an interplanetary spacecraft seems very possible for him. Add on the team of genius scientists and engineers that will assist him, and he's very likely to succeed. And yeah, you're right, Gwen, Reed's spacecraft could provide humanity with the opportunity to finally explore other planets and make significant discoveries, maybe even helping us to enhance our understanding of the universe. Or it could give him and his fellow crewmates cosmic powers. Wyatt thought knowingly. As they strolled through the bustling mall, the group moved from store to store, pausing to admire window displays that showcased everything from trendy clothing to the latest tech gadgets. Laughter and idle chatter filled the air as they exchanged opinions on various items, commenting on the absurdity of some of the fashion choices or the appeal of the newest gaming consoles. Wyatt, however, remained a step behind, his thoughts drifting far from the playful banter of his friends. The weight of the recent news about the captured mutants in Nevada haunted him, making it difficult to engage in their light-hearted conversation fully. At one point, Harry received a call from his mother, summoning him home, much to his chagrin. He rolled his eyes, expressing his annoyance to the group before bidding them farewell. Now, it was just Gwen, Peter, and Wyatt left to enjoy their planned movie night. They stood in line at the concession stand, the aroma of popcorn and candy wafting through the air, when suddenly, Peter's spider sense jolted him. A prickling sensation raced down his spine, leaving him alert and on edge, as he scanned their surroundings, sensing something was amiss. Sorry guys, but, I completely forgot I told Uncle Ben that I'd help him repaint the kitchen. How about a rain check? Peter said and quickly left the theater. Once out of sight, he changed into his suit and swung away. He's been doing that more and more lately, Gwen said as she turned to Wyatt. You're not going to ditch me, too, are you? Trusting Peter to handle whatever was going on in the city, Wyatt shook his head with a small smile. No. You're stuck with me tonight. Good. I don't know what I would do if you flaked on me, too, Gwen said. You'd probably give me the look, Wyatt said. What? I wouldn't do that. You're doing it right now. Ugh, whatever. Gwen rolled her eyes and looked down at her movie ticket. With Peter and Harry gone, I'm not really in the mood to watch the movie anymore. Do you wanna, I don't know, walk around or something? Wyatt shrugged and nodded in agreement. He wasn't in the mood to watch the movie that Peter and Harry had chosen earlier either. His mind was too busy and chaotic right now to focus on some dumb action movie. After leaving the theater, the two of them walked side by side through the streets of Manhattan until they reached Madison Square Park. Okay, what's on your mind? Gwen asked as they took a seat on a park bench. Sitting beside her, Wyatt handed her a vanilla ice cream cone he had bought while he held a chocolate cone in his own hand. You've had that contemplative expression all day. Oh, you noticed that? Wyatt responded, not attempting to deny it. He had learned that Gwen was very outspoken and stubborn, though she often disguised it under her sweet, bookish demeanor. It's a bit hard to ignore you staring at your Subway sandwich as if it held the answers to the universe, Gwen said, an amused smile on her face. Talk to me, Wyatt. What's wrong? It's just... Wyatt began, pausing for a moment. He had debated whether to lie about his true thoughts but felt the urge to seek Gwen's opinion on his current dilemma. He knew he had to be careful with his words. It's about a book I'm reading. You see, the protagonist is facing a tough moral dilemma. He has to confront a significant challenge, but the consequences could change everything for him. I see. What's the challenge? He has to go against his nation's government to save hundreds of kidnapped civilians. However, what the government is doing, taking these people, is not seen as wrong by a significant portion of the population. Do you think he should help free those captured civilians, even if it means becoming an enemy of the nation and facing hostility from the people he has served up to that point? Wyatt asked, leaning forward on his knees, his ice cream forgotten. Gwen hummed in thought and took a lick of her frozen treat. Well, I'd like to know more about this book, but based on what you've told me, I believe the protagonist should do what he thinks is right. What if what he believes is right turns everyone against him? Wyatt whispered. I believe that's a possibility. Doing the right thing isn't always easy. If it were, everyone would be doing it. It takes a certain amount of bravery and courage to stand up for your beliefs, regardless of what others say. So yes, I think the protagonist should save those people, no matter the consequences, Gwen replied. Now I'm curious, what's the title of this book? Wyatt stared at his ice cream cone and gave it a small lick. Turning to Gwen, he smiled appreciatively. Honestly? I forgot the title. I just remember this part. What? You can't do that. Now I'm even more curious to find this story. Gwen lightly glared at Wyatt for piquing her curiosity and leaving her high and dry. Do you at least know what he ended up deciding to do? Wyatt chuckled as Gwen lightly pushed his shoulder. He did the right thing, regardless of what the world says about him. It's like a wise woman once said, even when the whole world tells you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye, and say, no, you move. Wyatt quoted the woman who founded S.H.I.E.L.D., the legendary Peggy Carter. Wow, that's beautiful. Are you gonna tell me who said that? I'm thinking about it. At his answer, Gwen gave Wyatt what the group called a look. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the city, Wyatt offered to walk Gwen home. They stood at a bustling intersection, the air filled with a mix of voices and distant sirens as they waited for the crosswalk sign to light up. Gwen, feeling the gentle breeze ruffle her hair, glanced around. A hurried businesswoman clutching her phone, a group of laughing students with backpacks slung over their shoulders, an elderly man with a cane, and many more. All waiting for the light to change at last, the pedestrian signal changed, brightening green. The people at the corner began to step into the crosswalk, eager to cross the street and continue on their way. Just as they made their way forward, a sudden cacophony shattered the evening tranquility. Crashes echoed, blaring horns invaded the air, and startled screams arose from the crowd. Gwen and Wyatt spun around, eyes wide, as an out-of-control box truck barreled down the street toward them. Get out of the way. My brakes don't work. The box truck's driver screamed in a panic as he tried his best to slow himself down. His hand pulled on the emergency brake as far as it would go, and he maneuvered the truck to avoid all the cars in his path. Move. Everyone on the crosswalk instinctively recoiled, their faces pale with alarm. Wyatt, in a blur of urgency, seized Gwen by the arm and yanked her back to a safe distance. As she stumbled away, her eyes widened in horror at the scene unfolding before her. A boy with oversized headphones nestled over his ears strolled forward, blissfully unaware of the impending danger, lost in the rhythm of his own world. Just as panic surged within her and the urge to scream bubbled up, Gwen caught a fleeting glimpse of a red-brown blur dashing beside her. Wyatt sprang into action, his muscles coiled like a tightly wound spring as he dashed toward the oblivious child. Time seemed to slow as he propelled himself forward. With a fierce adrenaline-fueled burst, he leaped, extending his arms as he soared through the air. Wrapping them protectively around the unsuspecting boy, he spun them both in a nimble arc, rolling across the asphalt in a desperate bid to escape the encroaching danger. The massive box truck careened down the street, a blur of steel and decibels, missing Wyatt's foot by a mere 5 inches. In a fluid motion, he turned his head, eyes locked on the behemoth of metal, and subtly extended a hand toward its ominous wheels from under his body. In an instant, a dull cascade of crimson light enveloped the truck's underside, illuminating the grimy surfaces as the brake pads seemed to melt to the disc rotors. A resounding, agonizing screech tore through the air as smoke billowed and churned from the tortured tires, which finally surrendered to the unrelenting force and came to a grinding halt, kicking up a cloud of smoke further down the road. Hey! What was that for? The kid yelled angrily as he took off his earphones. He then finally noticed the smoking box truck and realized what had occurred. Omen, my mom's going to kill me. Wyatt gazed at the kid with a mix of disbelief and concern, his brow furrowing as he stood up slowly. After carefully inspecting the boy for any injuries, he let out a heavy sigh of relief. Just as he was processing the moment, the unexpected warmth of a hug, almost a tackle, surged into him, catching him off guard. He looked down to find Gwen's anxious face, her eyes wide and searching, staring up at him with a mixture of relief and worry. Wyatt. That was amazing. No, wait, that was extremely stupid and dangerous. Are you hurt? Oh, sorry. I guess, my body just moved on its own. Wyatt said with a shaky smile. As applause erupted around them, filling the air with a chorus of gratitude and admiration, Wyatt felt a mix of exhilaration and vulnerability. The crowd's appreciation for his heroism would typically have been a familiar experience, especially when clad in his atomic suit. But now, stripped of that protective armor, he felt exposed and uncertain, as if the cheers were not for him but for a stranger. He managed a shy smile, rubbing the back of his head, his fingers running through his tousled hair in a nervous gesture. Gwen, stepping back to take it all in, couldn't help but shake her head in disbelief. He had just pulled off an incredibly dangerous stunt, an act that bordered on reckless, but there was no denying the bravery it took to put himself in harm's way to save someone else. As she observed him, something shifted within her. Despite the wildness of his actions, Wyatt's selflessness shone through. There had always been something remarkable about him, but today, watching him bask in the spotlight, she began to see him in a new light, one that illuminated not just his courage, but also the heart beneath his seemingly carefree exterior. "You're kind of amazing, aren't you, Wyatt?" Gwen thought, a warm smile spreading across her face as the realization settled in. It was a moment that marked a turning point in her perception of him. "Number 077, an MRD agent said, gripping his assault rifle tightly, ready to fire. 3 other agents stood alongside him in the large, white room, their weapons drawn. "You may now begin." A 15-year-old boy with blonde hair and blue eyes nodded shakily as he rubbed his sore legs. He glanced back at the restraint chair that had held him for the past 12 hours, fear evident in his eyes. The boy's name was Samuel Zachary Guthrie, a young mutant from Kentucky who had been kidnapped from his family's farm 6 months ago. "Number 077, begin." The MRD agent commanded again, his voice low and authoritative. He, along with the rest of the agents in the room, raised their rifles and aimed directly at Samuel. "Oh, okay." Samuel stammered and quickly moved to the center of the room. He closed his eyes and concentrated. Glowing orange energy erupted around his feet, and after a moment of struggle, Samuel began to float in the air, empowered by his ability to generate thermochemical energy released from his skin. With sweat pouring down his face, Samuel slowly flew around the room. However, after 20 seconds, he gasped and fell 20 feet to the ground. Samuel cried out in pain and rolled on the floor, trying to ease his discomfort. After almost 30 seconds of erratic flight, Number 077's performance showed a slight improvement compared to yesterday's meager 27 seconds. Bolivar Trask, a man of short stature yet immense ambition, said as he jotted down notes in the expansive control room of the high-security facility. The air was filled with a palpable tension as the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating the myriad of screens displaying live feeds of the captured mutants. The facility, situated deep within the arid landscape of Nevada, was a fortress funded by the U.S. government and designed to currently contain the growing population of mutants, 213 in total. Its towering walls and cutting-edge technology are provided by the powerful conglomerates Hammer and Oscorp Industries. Bolivar's eyes, sharp and analytical, scanned the monitors displaying Samuel's chaotic attempts as he winged and stumbled through his test. Glancing up from his clipboard, Bolivar locked his gaze onto the one-way reinforced mirror that separated him from Samuel. Disappointment etched across his features, and he spoke with frustration and pragmatism. "At this rate, we'll be throwing away resources for something that shows little promise. I propose we relocate 077 under my watch, where it might serve a more strategic purpose," he declared. Beside Bolivar stood a tall, gray-haired man in a high-ranking military uniform. Colonel William Stryker Jr. He frowned and shook his head. "You mean your laboratory? What happened to the other 7 subjects you had?" "They broke down under the stress from my testing. I require more. Unfortunately, we can't provide you with any more. General Greller has decided to take a more active role in the MRD. If more of these subjects start to disappear without explanation, he'll scrutinize the facility and find out what you've been doing. For now, we continue with the intended mission," Stryker said, visibly dissatisfied. "Ah, yes, the government's plans to inexplicably create an army of super soldiers using its newly reinvented super soldier serum to defend the country. An army of Captain Americas. What a farcical plan. It's disgusting to use these creatures to protect our nation. It will never work. These subjects are only useful for research purposes, nothing more," Bolivar remarked, watching the agents below as they strapped Samuel into a restraint chair. "Orders are orders," Stryker replied. "No matter how idiotic they may be. If it were my decision, I'd eliminate all these subjects the moment we found them." "That would be a waste. Despite their nature, these mutants have their uses," Bolivar said with a smile, showing no regret or shame. "Shall we proceed with our next future soldier?" "Yes." "Bring in number 201, Bolivar instructed, pushing a button on the control panel. Down below, Samuel was wheeled out of the room, and a new mutant was brought in. The agents at her sides undid her bindings and removed her blindfold. Jubilation blinked and adjusted to the bright light. With a defeated expression, she looked around the room and began to display the results of her enforced training. At the outdoor training grounds of Xavier's mansion, a small group of teens wearing black and yellow uniforms chatted and joked with each other. On one end of the field, Scott and Kurt stood near a high-tech projectile launcher designed to help train the younger X-Men in using their abilities. "All right, focus up. Bobby, you're up," Scott called out. "Finally. Let me show you all how it's done." "Robert Bobby," Drake exclaimed as he stretched his arms. A chorus of chuckles and groans erupted from his friends. "Let's do this." "Okay. And launch," Kurt announced as Scott pressed a button on the remote he held. The machine whirred to life and launched a speeding projectile toward Bobby. With a confident smile, Bobby fired a beam of ice that struck the projectile, encasing it in frost before it shattered into pieces. He let out a cheer and turned to his friends with a cocky grin, utterly unaware of the second projectile flying straight at him. "Behind you!" Amara Juliana Olivia Aquila cried out and pointed to the disc flying at Bobby's back. Bobby quickly turned around and raised his arms to guard against the spewing disc, only for the disc to explode thanks to one of Scott's optic blasts. "And that's why you don't turn your back on an opponent. Always stay on your toes, Bobby. There won't always be someone to warn or help you," Scott said, taking his hand off his visor. "Ah, right," Bobby said in embarrassment. "Hey, isn't that Wyatt?" one of the young mutants cried out, pointing at the sky above the mansion. Floating above them with his cape billowing in the air was Atomic. "What's he doing up there?" "I have a bad feeling about this, Kurt," Scott said, and in an instant, Kurt placed a hand on his shoulder. They vanished and reappeared at the mansion's front entrance. Logan, Aurora, and Hank were already there. Jean, Kitty, Rogue, and Evan quickly ran outside and looked up to see Atomic descending. Usually, this wouldn't have been an odd sight. Wyatt had traveled to the mansion in costume on several occasions, but he had always removed it upon arrival. Now, however, he stood tall in his red and white suit before them, surrounded by a heavy energy. "What's going on, kid?" Logan asked. "I'm here to speak to the professor," Atomic replied, without removing his helmet. His voice lacked the usual levity and ease that his friends were accustomed to. The only other time he acted this way was when Cerebro was compromised during their house party. "It's important." "Easy, Wyatt. You're among friends. What's troubling you?" Beast inquired, his brow furrowed with concern as he studied Atomic's tense demeanor. "Wyatt? What's wrong?" Kitty chimed in, her eyes wide with worry, mirroring the unease etched on her face. Atomic's shoulders rose and fell as he took a deep, steadying breath, searching for the right words. Before he could respond, a figure emerged from the sprawling mansion behind him, Charles, exuding an air of calm authority. "I'm here, Wyatt. Why don't we step into my office so we can talk?" he suggested, his voice soothing yet firm. "No, we can talk out here," Atomic replied, his voice gaining strength as he regained his composure. The statement hung in the air, sending ripples of tension through the group. Scott's frown deepened, and Logan raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet wary. Younger mutants, who had gathered at a respectful distance, exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued by Atomic's unusual intensity. "Okay, you're starting to scare me. I've never heard you sound so serious," Kitty said, her tone laced with trepidation. "Did someone die or something?" Kurt blurted out, only to receive a swift smack on the back of his head from Rogue. "Sorry," he muttered, sheepishly rubbing the spot. Atomic paused, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He exhaled deeply, then allowed his helmet to dissolve into thin air, revealing his face to everyone. This was a moment he had hoped to avoid, yet he understood that he had to confront the truth and take responsibility for his future actions, regardless of what his mentors or friends might think. With a straight back and a steady expression, Wyatt took a deep breath and shared the gravity of his decision. He spoke candidly about the upcoming joint operation with Magneto, ensuring that no details were left unspoken. He revealed his plan to liberate every mutant imprisoned by the government. As he spoke, He pulled out photographs he created using his memory that Magneto had shown him, evidence of their cause, vivid and charged with emotion. The only secret he withheld was Magneto's alarming theory about his own questionable identity as a mutant, a thought he decided not to share amidst the tension of the moment. I knew it. I knew you couldn't be trusted. You're working with Magneto of all people. Don't you know everything he's done? The pain and suffering he has caused to everyone here. Scott raged. And even with all that, you're still working with him. As Scott tried to advance toward Wyatt, Logan held out an arm. That's enough, Scott, Logan said, his voice steady. Stand down. But, I won't repeat myself, Logan stated with a tone of finality. The students exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of how to respond to the situation. They knew what was happening with their fellow mutants. It was the reason the majority of them were at the institution, seeking safety. Wyatt, what you're doing will have serious consequences. Consequences that could destroy everything you've built. The trust of the people could vanish if you go through with this, Charles warned. I understand. But I can't ignore what I've seen, Wyatt replied, turning to Scott. I have to do something. Scott's anger began to fade at Wyatt's sincere words. Unsure of how to respond, he ultimately chose silence. Charles nodded and rolled closer to Wyatt. That's very admirable of you, Charles said. But it seems you have more to say. I do. I want your help. I don't trust Magneto or his Brotherhood of Mutants. But if I had you all at my back, then I'm certain we can pull this off and free everyone they've captured. Wyatt said. As his words hung in the air, students and teachers exchanged thoughtful glances, each grappling with their own feelings about the risk ahead. The younger mutants, their eyes wide with anticipation, turned toward their teachers for guidance on what to do. Logan, the grizzled veteran of the group with years of battle-worn experience etched on his face, stepped forward. He placed a strong, reassuring hand on Charles's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. Charles, whatever path you choose, we'll back your decision, Logan said. Aurora, with her regal presence, and Beast, with his keen intellect, nodded in agreement, their silent support palpable in the tense atmosphere. Even the oldest students added their nods, a collective show of unity. I'm sorry, Wyatt, but we cannot join you on your mission. My agreement with the President of the United States is, at best, shaky. This school is the only thing that stands between the MRD and everyone here. If we proceed with this mission, my students will no longer be safe. I want to help, I truly do. I'm fully aware of what's happening outside my school and to those trapped in the facility in Nevada. It pains me deeply. I can barely sleep at night knowing there's nothing I can do to help, but I have to prioritize my students. They are my responsibility. Charles said. Professor. We have to dash. Scott was quickly stopped by Jean, who shook her head. Scott looked at her as if she had grown a second head and shrugged off her hand. Scott clenched his fists, the intensity of his emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. He felt an overwhelming urge to confront Charles and passionately advocate for the X-Men's involvement in the mission ahead. The stakes seemed incredibly high, and the thought of the team standing idle while others fought for a cause he believed in gnawed at him. Yet, as he searched for the right words, a wave of reason washed over him, dousing his fiery impulses. He realized, with a heavy heart, that Charles's perspective was grounded in a sobering truth. If the X-Men were to engage in this mission, they wouldn't just confront external threats, they would put their very existence at risk. The possibility of losing their safe haven, the fragile balance of their lives, and everything they had fought to protect loomed heavily in his mind. The thought paralyzed him momentarily, forcing him to acknowledge that the cost of participation could be far greater than he had imagined. Damn it, Scott thought. Is there truly nothing we can do? Rogue asked softly, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if seeking comfort from her own doubts. She looked around at her friends, searching their faces for any glimmer of hope. "Man, this is so messed up," Kurt said, his voice heavy with sadness. He stared at the ground, the weight of their situation pulling him down. Beside him, Evan nodded in agreement, placing a reassuring hand on his friend's shoulder, silently conveying his shared frustration and helplessness. "Sorry, Wyatt. But we can't help. Our hands are tied," Logan said regretfully, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. The anger in his eyes mirrored his inner turmoil. As a protector, he hated feeling powerless. "It's all right. I understand," Wyatt replied, a small, understanding smile playing on his lips despite the dread surrounding them. But when this is all over, those mutants will need a place to go, a sanctuary where they can feel safe and accepted. Charles, ever the visionary leader, smiled sadly and nodded in agreement. My institution will welcome them with open arms, he assured them, his voice steady but tinged with the weight of his responsibilities. Wyatt was about to leave when suddenly, Kitty dashed toward him, her expression frantic as she grasped his arm. No. No. This is so messed up. You can't do this. Please. Her eyes shone with urgency, desperation spilling over in her plea. I have to, Kitty, Wyatt said gently, patting her back in a comforting gesture. I can't just stand by and do nothing. That's not who I am, and you know that. Then I'll come too. Kitty exclaimed, her voice rising in intensity. You said my powers were perfect for something like this. Let me help. I can make a difference. Kitty, Aurora interjected softly, her tone tinged with concern. She stepped closer but ultimately made no move to physically restrain the spirited girl. Think about what you're doing. If you go, you won't be safe anymore, not even here with us. We won't be able to protect you if the government comes for you. I don't care. Kitty shouted, her frustration boiling over. What are we even talking about? There's a whole facility of people like us. Isn't that what the X-Men are for? To help mutants in need? This is so stupid. We're abandoning our kind. She turned defiantly toward her teachers, her voice filled with conviction. We have to do this, even if it means risking our own safety. She's right. We have to help. Kurt said, stepping resolutely beside Kitty and Wyatt. His determination flared as he looked around, seeing the mutual fear and uncertainty. I won't let my friend do this alone. Me neither. I'm not going to sit this out, Evan added, his chest swelling with pride and rebellion, as a newfound sense of purpose took hold. Jean, watching the scene unfold, turned to Scott, seeking some direction from him. He had been unusually silent, with an eerie calmness that made her uneasy. Deep down, she felt torn. Part of her yearned to aid those trapped in despair, desperate for freedom. Yet another voice whispered caution, reminding her of everything at stake. The safety of Xavier's school for the gifted youngsters hung in the balance. Kitty. Evan. Kurt, Scott said slowly, his voice low and steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. Enough. Get back here. The authority in his tone demanded attention, redirecting the energy of the group and challenging their resolve. But Scott no. I understand what you're feeling, Scott said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. He took a deep breath, his brow furrowed with the weight of the moment. Hell, I want to join you. I want to be out there, fighting for those people, setting them free. But if we go through with this, we'll tear this place apart. We'll destroy our home and everything we've fought for. We need to trust Wyatt to handle this, as difficult as it is to accept. He stepped closer to Wyatt, pausing to meet his gaze, determination etched on his features. I was wrong about you. I'm sorry for what I said before. That was wrong of me. Wyatt blinked in surprise, briefly catching Scott's intense gaze. He looked down at the hand extended toward him, then a small smile crept onto his face as he grasped Scott's hand firmly. Thank you, Scott. That means a lot. Just be prepared. Several of these people will need the X-Men to help guide them. To show them how to use their abilities. They'll need this school. They'll need a good leader like you to show them the way. Scott nodded solemnly, taking a step back as the gravity of his decision settled in. He felt an aching desire to join Wyatt and fight alongside him, but he had to stay strong. Come on, guys. We have to let him go. Kitty, Evan, and Kurt exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of concern and frustration, itching to argue against Scott's decision. But before they could voice their protests, Wyatt gently glided them back using his powers. Scott's right. You all shouldn't be implicated in this. The X-Men can't be seen defying the government like I planned to. But Wyatt. Kitty started to say, her voice full of urgency, but her words were cut short when Wyatt put on his helmet. The sleek, metallic surface glinted as he shook his head, signaling the finality of his intent. With a deep breath, he began to float gracefully, leaving the ground behind. "Wyatt, I'm truly sorry we can't stand with you," Charles said, his voice thick with regret. He looked at the young man before him, a mix of pride and sorrow in his deep-set eyes. "Good luck out there. You're going to need it." With a determined nod, Wyatt focused on the skies above, his figure becoming more defined against the backdrop of the gathering storm clouds. Then, with a powerful blast, he surged into the sky, leaving a trail of shimmering energy behind him as he vanished into the depths of the clouds. "Kitty, I'm sure everything will be fine," Aurora began, her voice steady as she tried to offer reassurance. But before she could finish, Kitty abruptly phased out of her hold, her distress evident in her eyes. She rubbed them in frustration, trying to brush away the tears that threatened to spill over, and then dashed inside the mansion, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. The remaining group stood in heavy silence, each lost in their own tumultuous thoughts. A million unspoken words and regrets swirled in their minds, lingering in the air like a heavy fog. They all felt the weight of helplessness, yearning to have done something, anything, to help. Even Charles, typically a beacon of strength and wisdom, remained motionless. He observed Atomic's retreat with a mix of concern and sorrow, his hands clenched into tight fists at his sides. The gravity of the moment pressed down on him, and he bowed his head in shame, wishing he had found a way to assist in freeing all those trapped. Gunshots echoed ominously through the dimly lit alleyway, casting fleeting shadows on the damp walls. A terrified man clutched a purse tightly in his trembling hand, his wide eyes darting around as he desperately searched for an unseen presence. "Where are you?" he shouted, his voice cracking fearfully. Suddenly, a thick shimmering web shot through the air, ensnaring and yanking him upward into the darkness. The man's gun clattered to the ground alongside the stolen purse. "Don't you know guns are so last year?" Spider-Man said as he wrapped the thief in a bundle of webbing. "You must get with the times, otherwise, you'll be left behind. Is that what you want? To be lame like everyone else? Let me go, you basta." The thief was quickly interrupted as his mouth was webbed shut. The only sounds he could make were muffled screams of anger as he struggled against the webbing that trapped him. "Language," Spider-Man said as he hung the mun from a fire escape, right over a bin of trash that had been forgotten for 2 weeks. "Now then, where can I find your partner?" Spider-Man's spider senses tingled as a ripple of gunfire rang out through the alley. With a leap, the web-slinging hero dodged the bullets that would have ripped through him and landed with the grace of a gold-medal gymnast on the wall beside him. From this vantage point, he saw the upside-down thief's partner aiming an MP5 submachine gun. Just as the mun was about to pull the trigger again, a flash of crimson light enveloped his MP5. "What the hell?" he exclaimed, confused as he raised his weapon. Suddenly, it transformed into a gun made entirely of Lego. In an instant, 4 crimson spheres appeared around his hands and feet. The mun gasped as he was lifted into the air, his limbs stretched out. "Show off," Spider-Man remarked, watching Atomic gently descend in front of the thief's partner with his arms crossed. Floating behind Atomic was a glowing sphere containing a briefcase. At the sight of the case, Spider-Man arched an eyebrow in confusion. "It's you," the thief exclaimed, wide-eyed. "Listen, man, I was just defending myself from that freak. Honestly." Atomic rolled his eyes from behind his helmet and waved his hand. The thief yelped as he was forced to the ground in a heap, his limbs locked together by thick ropes that trapped him face down. "Eve, notify the police about these two," Atomic instructed his AI, named after the woman whose powers his own had seemingly mirrored. With another wave, the thief's Lego MP5 reverted to its original state, handprints and all. "Yes, sir," Eve replied in a robotic tone, lacking any human emotion. "How's the AI doing?" Spider-Man asked as he placed the stolen purse on a nearby crate. He then stuck a sticky note that read, "Courtesy of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man." "Oh, and Atomic. She still needs some work, but your notes on how to improve her voice recognition helped eliminate the whole killer robot voice she used to have," Atomic said as he and Spider-Man made their way to the rooftop. They traveled a few blocks away and stopped on the roof of a taco restaurant. "So, what's up? Need a hand saving the day and getting the girl? Or are we just grabbing a late-night snack?" Spider-Man asked. "No, nothing like that," Atomic replied, glancing out at the sprawling city of New York, its glowing lights piercing the darkness of the night. "I'm here to let you know that there will be some news about me soon, news that could paint me as a criminal. Or terrorist, really." Spider-Man immediately straightened up, sensing the seriousness in Atomic's voice. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You're aware of the government's actions against those who awaken the X gene, right?" Atomic replied. "Yeah. It's really messed up. I can't believe they're doing something like that." Atomic nodded, and the air between them grew heavy. "The facility where they hold all the captured people is in Nevada. I'm going to help free them all." "Whoa, hold on. You're saying you're going to go against the government? Are you serious?" Spider-Man's eyes widened in disbelief. "I get that what they're doing is wrong, but if you do that, the government will come after you. It's not just going to be those lame court summons they've been issuing. They'll actively pursue you." "Yeah, I understand that. But, Spidey, they have those people in cages, like they're animals. I can't just ignore that," Atomic said, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. "That's why I'm counting on you to pick up my slack in case something happens. I'm leaving the city under your protection, at least until I get back." Spider-Man's eyes widened at Atomic's words. Those sentiments meant a lot coming from someone he admired, the very person who inspired him to become a hero and to do what's right. After taking a calming breath, Spider-Man nodded and stood up straighter, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "I understand. But I'm not too worried. I know you'll free those people and come back. I doubt there's anyone stronger than you out there, especially with your powers," Spider-Man said. "Remember, Spidey, there's always someone stronger than you, stronger than me," Atomic replied. "But you're right, I'll be back. Just make sure the city doesn't burn itself down while I'm gone." Spider-Man chuckled and nodded. "You got it." "Ah, right, before I forget," Atomic said, motioning for the large briefcase behind him to float to him. Once it reached his hands, the glowing sphere that had kept the case suspended vanished, allowing it to land safely in Atomic's grasp. The briefcase had a large Spider-Man logo on top. "This is for you." Spider-Man tilted his head in confusion as he accepted the briefcase. "Oh, thanks. What is it?" Atomic chuckled and started to float. "Open it and find out. I have another stop to make, so I'll be heading out now. See you when I get back." Before Spider-Man could respond, Atomic blasted into the sky, leaving a trail of red behind. Confused, Spider-Man opened the briefcase. His eyes widened at the sight before him. He placed the briefcase down and slowly pulled out a new version of his suit. A large white spider logo adorned its chest. As he rubbed the fabric, he discovered it was made from various tough materials. "Whoa! Is this a mix of a carbon fiber weave and silk?" he muttered, feeling the red and blue sections of the new suit. Next, he examined the thick, armored white sections. "This is pure carbon fiber." Lifting the suit higher, he found another suit underneath it. A spare copy of the one in his hands. His attention shifted to the new mask, curiosity sparking within him. Once he made sure there were no cameras or people in sight, he quickly switched masks and gasped as a HUD sprang to life before his eyes. The lenses even had a zoom function. "Holy crap, this is awesome," Spider-Man whispered. His focus was then drawn to the 4 pairs of web shooters. Unlike the ones he currently wore, these were smaller and more compact, made of adamantium. There were also 2 cases filled with his web fluid formula cartridges. As he was about to close the briefcase, he noticed a note on the underside of the top lid. "Consider this my thanks for helping me get a head start on my AI," the note read. "Man, how am I supposed to find a Christmas gift that's anywhere near this awesome? Talk about pressure." The sky was dark, and the orange light from the overhead lamps illuminated the dreary docks. Nearby, the waves of the Hudson River crashed against the concrete shore, one after another. Lined along the river were several old shipping containers. Several unmarked vans pulled in and parked beside the containers. A group of men exited the vehicles and quickly walked toward the back of the vans, their eyes scanning the skies. "What if he shows up?" one of the men asked nervously. "Shut up. Just hurry up. We can't screw this job up, or it'll be our heads." The tallest and strongest of them hissed as he yanked open one of the van's back doors. Inside each van sat a terrified, kidnapped young woman. "Please," one of the women whispered. The men ignored her plea and dragged them out of the van by their hair. The women screamed in fear and pain. "Help! Help me! Help! Help me! They cried out, but they were silenced as the men struck them in the stomach. Shut up! Don't you dare talk! One of the men hissed, scanning the skies and distant rooftops. Hey! Hey! Man, shut the hell up! Turk Barrett growled as he approached the group. I'm getting $3,000 ahead for you all, so you better be quiet. I don't need that Cape bastard showing up here. If you cooperate, I'll let you have a bucket. If you don't. Turk pulled out an electric stun baton and activated it, arcs of electricity sparking to life and terrifying the women. One of the women, despite herself, began to scream and was immediately electrocuted. In horror, the others screamed as well. The men quickly subdued them. Typically, they wouldn't have injured their captives, as bruised and bloodied merchandise doesn't sell well. But with Atomic waging war on the city's human trafficking, damaged goods were good enough. The men gathered the women and threw them into a shipping container. Instinctively, the women huddled together, watching fearfully as Turk stood outside their container with a ruthless grin. Scream all you want. Go on, let me hear you scream. Scream louder. Give us a reason, Turk chuckled. Nobody cares down here. Not even that flying Boy Scout. Kneeling atop a nearby container, Matt Murdock, dressed in black with a blindfold covering half his head, listened intently. Silently, he moved from container to container until he positioned himself directly above Turk. One of the girls looked up and gasped at the sight of Matt, causing Turk to spin around just in time to see a flying fist coming at him. With swift and precise strikes, Matt took down Turk and moved on to his next target. Years of martial arts training and mastery of his senses allowed him to move with quick, fluid speed and skill. One punch after another, kick after kick, he quickly incapacitated each of the Russians who had kidnapped the women. Turk groaned as he slowly pulled a gun from his waistband. The soft click of the safety disengaging caught Matt's attention. He rolled forward, narrowly avoiding Turk's first gunshot. With another roll, he vanished between the shipping containers and disappeared into the shadows. That's not him, Turk muttered as he quickly rose. Which means I can still win. The sound of rushing footsteps echoed above him. Turk spun around and fired blindly in all directions, hoping to hit the intruder dressed in black. Silence filled the docks as Turk scanned the tops of the containers, leaving him unaware of Matt stealthily approaching from behind. With a precise throw, the metal stick in Matt's hand ricocheted off the shipping containers and struck Turk in the head. Turk collapsed, his head aching and bleeding. Matt picked up the metal stick and threw it at another man who had been watching everything unfold while eating a burger. The man's head snapped back, and he fell into the cold river behind him. Head towards 48th. Stay in the light. Flag down the first officer you see, Matt commanded. The girls only looked at him, frightened. Now! He yelled, slamming the back of his fist onto a nearby container. All the girls screamed and helped one another up. Without thanking their savior, they ran off in a panic. Matt exhaled and paused. He turned his head and heard a faint click. Reacting swiftly, he kicked the gun out of Turk's hand and leaned over him, his fist raised. With anger in his heart, Matt unleashed a flurry of punches to Turk's face. That's enough, Atomic said as he landed, grabbing Matt's wrist. While he didn't force Matt to stop, he snapped him out of his rage. Atomic, Matt said, stepping back. Atomic stepped forward, his presence commanding attention as he extended his hands. Pulsating, glowing tendrils slithered through the dimly lit docks, weaving in and out of the shadows as they gathered the incapacitated men and Turk. One by one, they were pulled along, their bodies limp and helpless, until they were arranged neatly against the weathered shipping containers. Thick, metal cuffs clamped around their wrists, encasing them in a cold embrace behind their backs. With a metallic clang, a heavy chain was affixed to their cuffs, anchoring them firmly to the ground, rendering any attempt at escape futile. Eve, call in the boys in blue, Atomic instructed. Yes, sir, Eve replied in a robotic tone. Atomic glanced away from the men and turned back to find that Matt was no longer there. He sighed and took to the skies. He sure loves to disappear, Atomic muttered to himself. Floating over the docks, Atomic landed on a rooftop a block away. There stood Matt, known to some as the Mun in the Mask. But to Atomic, he was the Mun without fear, Daredevil. Why are you here? Matt asked, his voice low and serious. Atomic had met Matt during one of the blind man's nightly escapades 2 months earlier. Matt had been startled at first to hear the sound of a heartbeat flying through the air but quickly connected the dots. He realized that New York's rising hero, Atomic, had come to confront him, or so he believed, while he was in the midst of apprehending a group of would-be rapists. Matt had been beating them down mercilessly. To his surprise, Atomic didn't intervene. Instead, his intent was to engage in conversation. Though initially hesitant, Matt gradually lowered his guard, and as they spoke, revelations unfolded. He discovered that Atomic was far more than the sensational headlines and exaggerated tales suggested. He was a kindred spirit driven by a compulsion to enact good in the world, albeit through methods that differed significantly from Matt's own. Despite their growing understanding, Matt found it difficult to fathom how a boy who couldn't yet legally claim adulthood, barely 17, judging by the cadence of Atomic's heartbeat, could possess such strength and conviction. A nagging urge coursed through Matt to implore Atomic to reconsider his path, to encourage him to leave the burdens of justice to those more seasoned. But voicing such concerns would mean revealing his own insights about Atomic's age and, inadvertently, a glimpse into his own identity. From there on, the two began collaborating to combat the kidnapping and human trafficking rings in the city. Whether operating as the Mun in the Mask or as the blind lawyer Matt Murdock working from Nelson and Murdock, he ensured that the criminals remained behind bars. Matt always found it suspicious that Atomic never questioned how a new and rising law firm consistently appeared to ensure that the law held these offenders accountable. A thought that Atomic somehow knew who he truly was ran through Matt's mind. "I'm here to talk. It's important," Atomic said, beginning to share everything he had told Spider-Man. Matt listened intently, never interrupting. "What you're doing. It's risky. Dangerous. While you've managed to avoid the law until now, if you go through with this plan, you'll be a criminal," Matt warned. "Everything you've done will be thrown away." "I'm not so sure about that. Many who see me as a hero might call me a criminal or a traitor, but I believe there will be more who see my actions as the right thing to do. Those people they've taken, they need my help. They deserve to be free, not kept in cages," Atomic replied. "I'm willing to fight for their freedom. If that makes me an enemy of the government, then so be it. Besides, we're vigilantes. Breaking the law is kind of our thing." Matt remained silent and nodded, his respect for Atomic growing after hearing his response. Atomic then told Matt about his friend, Spider-Man, mentioning that he could reach out to him for help if needed. Matt wasn't entirely sure about the spider-themed hero, but he would keep Atomic's advice in mind. "Regardless of the consequences, it seems you've made up your mind. If I were in your position, I'd likely do the same," Matt said. "Good luck, Atomic." "Thank you, Daredevil." "Why do you keep calling me that?" Matt asked. "It's fitting. Plus, calling you the Mun in the Mask is just too much of a mouthful," Atomic replied with a chuckle. He raised his hands, and a flash of crimson appeared, leaving behind a briefcase with 2 overlaid DS on the top. "Before I leave, I have something for you." Matt frowned at the sudden appearance of an object. One moment, there was nothing in Atomic's hands, and the next, something tangible materialized. It was a disconcerting experience for him. "I don't do gifts," Matt said. "That's okay." "It's not a gift," Atomic replied, pushing the briefcase into Matt's hands. "It's insurance." Atomic stepped back and began to float. "I'll catch you around, Daredevil." Before Matt could protest that name, Atomic launched into the night sky. The blind lawyer frowned as he traced the layered DS on the briefcase. With a click, he opened it, revealing a red and black mask with horns staring back at him. As he soared gracefully over the sprawling city of New York, Atomic reveled in the vibrant tapestry of life unfolding beneath him. From his vantage point in the sky, the bustling streets teemed with energy, a mosaic of yellow taxis weaving through throngs of pedestrians, and iconic skyscrapers piercing the horizon like sentinels. Even after countless flights, the sensation of gliding through the open sky remained one of the most exhilarating experiences he had ever known. Taking a deep, steadying breath, his suit shimmered with a bright flash of light, recalibrating and morphing into a more robust and imposing version of itself. He shot vertically into the atmosphere, his silhouette cutting through the clouds. As he ascended, the earth below shrank away, and the dark expanse of the sky wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. Soon, he reached the delicate boundary of Earth's exosphere, where the atmosphere thinned and the stars began to twinkle with a simply breathtaking intensity. In that vast silence, With the world fading beneath him, Atomic felt at peace. Suspended in the vastness of space, Atomic gazed down at the Earth, a vibrant blue marble swirling slowly beneath him. The planet was draped in a tapestry of white clouds, and patches of green and brown revealed the continents as they rotated gracefully on their axis. The glow of the sun cast a warm, golden light over the landscape, illuminating the oceans that shimmered like liquid sapphire. Time seemed to stretch as he remained there, captivated, much like one might linger to watch the sky change hues during a breathtaking sunset. "There's no going back now," Atomic said, his expression hardening as he flew toward the surface. But before he flew to Nevada, he had a few more stops to make. "See, I told you that Goody Two-Shoes wouldn't actually show up." Lance scoffed, his voice echoing slightly off the cave's cold, damp rock walls where he and his fellow Brotherhood members were waiting. The air was thick with anticipation, mingled with the earthy scent of moss and stone. He pushed himself away from the jagged wall, a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth as he crossed his arms over his chest. They were 8 kilometers away from the MRD's heavily fortified facility, the fortress that stood as a symbol of their oppression. Today's mission was critical, not just for their cause, but for proving that they could strike where it hurt. "Atomic will show. Have some patience, Lance," Mystique said, her voice smooth and reassuring as she perched gracefully upon a weathered rock. Her penetrating gaze was fixed on the cave's mouth, beyond which an endless expanse of sun-baked desert stretched out, shimmering under the midday sun. Suddenly, a silver streak darted in and out of the cave entrance, coming to a skidding halt to reveal Pietro, his expression a blend of impatience and annoyance. "When are we going to do this? I'm losing my mind in here," he exclaimed, his frustration palpable. "Why do we need that guy anyway? Can't we just smash in there and do this ourselves?" Frederick chimed in, his mouth still full of chips, crumbs scattering as he spoke. "I like the guy. Anyone who can make me free stuff from thin air is all right in my books," Todd declared, his green-tinted skin almost glowing with anticipation as he leapt down from the cave's ceiling. His eyes sparkled with a covetous gleam, reflecting dreams of treasures yet to come. "You really think Atomic is going to make you a mountain of gold? Keep dreaming, Toad. He'd sooner turn you in to the cops, Sti." John chuckled, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. With a flick of his wrist, he coaxed a swirling ball of fire into life, shaping it into a vivid rendition of Atomic and a bound Todd. The fiery figure of Atomic soared overhead, clutching Todd and depositing him unceremoniously behind a flaming jail cell. "Hey, what do you know?" "Maybe if I ask real nicely," Todd protested, but his words were interrupted as a striking figure, clad in red and white, gracefully descended at the cave's entrance, immediately capturing the attention of the group. Mystique's lips curved into a satisfied smile at the arrival of Atomic. A sense of relief washed over her. Her earlier concerns about whether the hero would appear had been unfounded. Heroes like him, unwavering and reliable, had a knack for keeping their promises, even when it put them in precarious situations. Atomic touched down with a purposeful grace, his sharp eyes surveying the ragtag group before him, his allies for the day. The Brotherhood stared back, a mix of skepticism and curiosity etched across their faces, as the air thickened with anticipation for what was to unfold. "Where's Magneto?" Atomic asked. "Right here, Atomic," Eric said from the skies. Atomic looked up to watch Eric float down from the sky, his arms behind his back. "With everyone here, we can begin our mission to save our brothers and sisters. Now then, let's go over strategy. Before that, let me make one thing clear," Atomic said and stepped closer to Eric, making everyone tense up. "We do this clean. We focus on rescuing and getting everyone out. But no one dies today. If any of you cross the line, our little partnership ends then and there. Is that clear?" Eric narrowed his eyes at Atomic, and a tense silence hung over them. "Very well. Our sole focus will be freeing our kind. The agents that beat and kidnapped them will live to see another day," he said tensely and turned to his Brotherhood. "Is that clear?" A chorus of agreements quickly followed, while Mystique remained silent and narrowed her eyes at Atomic. Satisfied that he had thoroughly expressed his point, Atomic stepped back to listen to Eric's plan of action. The strategy laid out before him was uncomplicated yet daring. Mystique would infiltrate the heavily fortified facility, disguised as one of its personnel. Her primary objective was to locate the control room. Once she gained access, she would deactivate the facility's security systems and unlock all the holding cells, freeing the mutants who had been captured and confined for far too long. As chaos reigned from the now freed mutants, the rest of the Brotherhood would storm into the facility, wreaking havoc and destruction to create a potent distraction for the MRD agents. Under the cover of this madness, Pietro would dart throughout the building with incredible speed, racing against time to ensure that every captured mutant made it out of the facility. Atomic's role in the operation was, on the surface, deceptively straightforward. His task was to forge a clear escape route by dismantling any defensive systems the facility had in place with his powers, as well as removing the large outer perimeter wall. The simplicity of his assignment nagged at him. It felt almost beneath his capabilities. When the dust settled and the escapees were safe outside the facility, Eric's formidable powers would bring the entire facility to ruin once everyone, including MRD personnel, was clear, a grand finale to their mission. Atomic couldn't shake a sense of unease as he contemplated the plan. Although it was undoubtedly simple, loud, and explosive, he felt the lingering doubt that Eric was deliberately underutilizing his talents. Was it intentional? Despite these inner conflicts, Atomic resolved to keep his misgivings to himself, opting to follow Eric's plan for the time being. Yet beneath his calm exterior, he began to devise his own contingency plan, just in case things didn't unfold as expected. Dr. Robert McPherson, once a dedicated U.S. Army medic and now a highly accomplished physician and researcher, walked through the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors of the MRD's Nevada facility. His calm demeanor and schooled features masked the turmoil churning within him. Beneath the surface, Robert was a man weighed down by the heavy burden of his moral conscience, grappling with his inability to act upon what he knew was wrong. He had initially joined the MRD in response to the government's urgent efforts to prevent another incident like the one involving Sasha Connor, a disaster that had left the nation reeling with fear and distrust. The event had amplified a once pedestrian concern about mutants into a full-blown societal anxiety, driving wedges between communities and fostering prejudice against those who were different. Eager to contribute positively, Robert had accepted a position at the facility, drawn by the hope of studying and helping young mutants learn to control their burgeoning abilities. The prospect of exploring the intricate interactions between the X gene and human DNA had filled him with anticipation. He envisioned a future where mutants could be understood and accepted, living harmoniously alongside humans. However, this dream of potential and compassion was quickly extinguished when Robert uncovered the grim reality of the facility. What had been sold to him as a sanctuary for growth and understanding was, in truth, a nightmarish facade. Day after day, he was forced to walk the same sterile halls and witness the anguish of kidnapped mutants, both children and adults, who had been wrenched from their homes and thrust into a nightmarish existence. They were subjected to cruel testing and forced to endure inhumane conditions that pushed the boundaries of pain and suffering. The heart of Robert's resolve began to crumble. He felt a visceral sickness each time he observed the fear in the eyes of the frightened subjects, many of whom were barely clinging to hope. The intention of helping and fostering understanding had been replaced by a grim pattern of exploitation and torment, leaving him in a moral quagmire. The urge to quit consumed him. The thought of abandoning ship, however, was quickly quelled by the shackles of his government contract. It was a grim reminder of how far he had strayed from his initial intentions. He recalled the fate of the previous physician whose position he had unknowingly taken, a cautionary tale of what happened to those who dared to defy the dictate of the government. Any misstep could lead him down that same dark path, and the fear of becoming another casualty of this twisted system bolstered his internal struggle. Robert McPherson was trapped in a reality where his desire to help had turned into a haunting nightmare, one that threatened not only his career but also the fragments of his dwindling moral integrity. Pausing in front of the imposing steel door, Robert inhaled deeply, allowing the cool, metallic scent to fill his lungs as he steadied his racing heart. With a final steadying breath, he pushed the door open and stepped into the dimly lit medical exam room. There, Jubilation sat calmly in the center, her expression unreadable. Looming behind her were two MRD agents, their eyes sharp and vigilant, fingers hovering just above their holstered firearms, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. "It's okay. I can handle it from here," Robert said with a calm demeanor. "I'm sorry, Doctor, but we have orders," one of the agents replied. "I understand, but I can't perform my duties with you two gentlemen making her uncomfortable," Robert said, gesturing toward the door. "If I need your assistance, you'll only be a few feet away. Please." The MRD agents exchanged glances and shrugged. Without another word, they left the room. As soon as they were gone, Robert dropped his cold exterior and offered Jubilation a small smile. "Hello, Jubilation," Robert said, deliberately ignoring his orders to refer to the mutants in the facility by their assigned numbers. "How are you doing today?" Jubilation took a deep breath and returned his smile, raising her hands, which were secured in thick steel handcuffs. "Oh, Doc, about as good as any other day," she said, tilting her head. Her now shoulder-length hair brushed against her neck, tickling her. "So, what's on the agenda today? A psych test? A physical? A mental evaluation?" Robert's smile faltered slightly, but he pulled a tablet from his satchel. "No tests today." "But today's Thursday? Shouldn't you be doing your usual weekly tests?" "I thought we could try something new today," Robert said as he tapped away on his tablet. Once he was finished, he flipped it around to show Jubilation a video of 3 women dancing on stage. They were performing a K-pop song, moving with incredible fluidity. "I finally gave that group you recommended a try. Their songs are pretty catchy." "Ah, I told you the Sunlight Sisters were amazing," Jubilation exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear as she watched one of the world's most famous K-pop groups sing and dance. "What I wouldn't give to have seen them perform live. It's too bad they retired." Robert smiled softly as he watched Jubilation become engrossed in the video playing on the screen before her. He set his tablet down gently beside him, allowing her the quiet space to indulge in the moment. As she watched, Robert shifted his focus to the assessment report he needed to complete. With practiced ease, he began crafting the necessary paperwork, though it was a facade, embellished to align with the expectations of the facility's guidelines. To Jubilation and the other residents confined within the stark walls of the facility, Dr. Robert was a beacon of kindness. He was not just one of the 3 doctors on staff, he was the one who stood out for his genuine compassion. He treated each individual with respect and dignity, a rare commodity in their world. While the hierarchy often instilled fear and distrust amongst the staff, Robert went above and beyond to ensure that his patients felt cared for and valued. He risked his own safety to navigate tight situations, often bending the rules to bring them small treats, little tokens of normalcy in an otherwise controlled environment. Suddenly, the tranquility of the room was shattered. A violent tremor rippled through the examination space, shaking loose papers from the desk and rattling the instruments mounted on the walls. Panic flickered in Jubilation's eyes as the harsh red lights began to pulse rhythmically, casting an ominous glow over the room. The blaring alarms filled the air with a frantic cacophony, signaling an emergency that no one had anticipated. Thinking quickly amidst the chaos, Robert sprang to his feet. Quickly, he hurled his tablet into a nearby trash bin, prioritizing Jubilation's safety above all else. With instinctive protectiveness, he positioned himself in front of her, ready to shield her from whatever threat was looming. Just then, the door swung open with a forceful bang, and 2 MRD agents marched into the room, rifles at the ready, their expressions taut with determination. Tension electrified the air as the reality of their presence settled in. This was a moment that would test Robert's resolve like never before. "Doctor, we have a situation. We're moving you to the evacuation center," one of the agents said. "What about Juby number 201? Robert asked. "Forget about her. You're our priority. Now get moving," the agent replied, pushing Robert out of the room. Robert craned his neck back and gasped as he saw the other agent raise his firearm at Jubilation. "Close your eyes, kid. I'll make this quick," the agent warned. Adrenaline surged through Robert, and his hand flew to grab the pair of scissors from his desk. Planting his feet on the floor, he shoved the agent behind him back, taking him off balance. With a spin, Robert swung the pair of scissors into the agent's neck, slicing through his flesh and ripping the man's internal jugular vein. "What the hell?" The agent who was about to shoot Jubilation yelled and turned to Robert. He paused in sheer disbelief as he watched his partner fall to his knees, grasping his bleeding neck. "You bastard." The agent growled and raised his rifle. Robert stepped back and froze at the sight of the barrel. Before the agent could fire, Jubilation yelled and brought down her thick steel handcuffs onto the agent's neck, knocking the man out cold. Snapping out of it, Robert grabbed one of the agent's assault rifles, a key card, and a set of keys. "Damn me, no going back now," he whispered. He then turned to a scared Jubilation and resolved himself. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he wasn't about to allow Jubilation to get hurt, not as long as he could do anything about it. "Come on. I'm getting you out of here," he said as he unlocked Jubilation's steel cuffs from her wrists and ankles. Wait, Jubilation whispered, her voice trembling as she instinctively glanced toward the bleeding corpse sprawled on the cold, sterile floor. Before she could fully lay eyes on the corpse, Robert stepped into her path, a firm but gentle presence that shielded her from the sight. "It's okay. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Now, follow me," Robert said, his voice steady as he opened the door to the examination room, peering cautiously into the chaotic hallway beyond. The corridor was filled with an eerie cacophony of blaring alarms and the glaring illumination of red emergency lights, casting frantic shadows over the faces of scientists, doctors, and facility personnel. They darted past in a frenzy, adrenaline propelling them toward the evacuation zone, their expressions a mix of fear and anxiety. Taking a steadying breath, Robert stepped back into the room. He placed the rifle down with a deliberate motion, then swiftly removed his doctor's coat, wrapping it around Jubilation's shoulders. "Okay, stay close to me. I'm getting you home, all right?" Robert said, forcing a shaky smile that didn't quite reach his eyes as the facility shuddered violently. Jubilation inhaled deeply, steeling herself before nodding in quiet resolve. With a final reassuring glance, Robert returned the smile, small yet genuine, and together they stepped into the chaos unfolding outside. Chaos surged through the Mutant Response Division's facility, transforming it into a battleground of red lights flashing ominously against the stark white walls. At the same time, blaring alarms pierced the air like a relentless cacophony. The occasional tremor or explosion shook the building to its core, sending employees scrambling with wide-eyed panic. Yet amid the chaos, the more seasoned MRD agents remained composed, moving with precision and purpose to reach their posts and respond to the escalating attack. One figure stood out among the flurry of frantic movements. A man clad in an officer's uniform strode through the halls indifferently, as if oblivious to the turmoil surrounding him. His hat was pulled low over his eyes, casting a shadow that concealed his sharp, almost glowing gaze. When a pair of agents rushed past him, breathless and oblivious to their surroundings, the officer allowed himself a smirk, the corners of his mouth curling as they failed to acknowledge his presence. In reality, this officer was none other than Mystique, in a meticulously crafted disguise. Her surprisingly straightforward mission brought a hint of amusement to her lips. Engaging her shape-shifting abilities, she soared into the facility as an inconspicuous bird, seamlessly adopting the guise of a U.S. officer idly smoking a cigarette on the rooftop. With cunning precision, she had polished the surveillance cameras in that area out of existence before swooping down to knock him out cold. Though a surge of anger coursed through her at the thought of strangling the Mun, after all, he represented the scum of the earth in her eyes, a cog in the machine that kidnapped and tortured her kind, she restrained herself. Eric had instructed her to avoid taking lives for now. They needed Atomic on their side, and jeopardizing that fragile alliance by spilling blood was not in her interests. With her disguise firmly in place, Mystique strolled through the facility's stark, fluorescent-lit corridors, finally arriving at the control room. Initially, a wave of apprehension washed over her at the prospect of hacking into the facility's intricate systems alone. Technology was never her strength. In the past, she had to rely on the tech wizard Weber to infiltrate Cerebro and plunder student BIOS, including Atomic's true identity. Fortunately, any doubts were banished when Atomic presented her with 2 flash drives, each loaded with the necessary programs and code to tap into the facility's computers. While the Brotherhood regarded Atomic with a mix of suspicion and curiosity, Eric merely flashed a knowing grin. This so-called future of mutant kind was not only extremely powerful due to his potential abilities but also exceptionally intelligent, a perilous combination in her eyes. Despite her reservations regarding the flash drives, Mystique recognized she had no choice but to trust them. Once inside the control room, she wielded her officer guise to navigate freely, exuding an air of authority that silenced any potential questions from the bewildered tech experts surrounding her. No one dared to question why a high-ranking officer was gracing them with her presence. When the moment was ripe, Mystique deftly inserted the flash drives into the main computer, her heart pounding in anticipation. In less than 10 seconds, the facility was plunged into utter chaos. Security cameras went dark, perimeter gates ground to a halt, and the heavy doors leading to hundreds of cells swung open with a satisfying whoosh. Control over the facility's once mighty systems had crumbled like a house of cards, releasing a glorious avalanche of systemic failure. As the pandemonium erupted behind her, Mystique grasped the flash drives and exited the room, a triumphant grin plastered across her disguised face. Confusion and panic swirled in her wake, enveloping the tech team in disarray. Little did she, or anyone else within the Brotherhood, realized that those flash drives harbored a secret purpose that would unravel with a devastating impact well before it was too late. Get the hell out of my way. A thunderous crack reverberated through the air as Fred, known to many as the Blob, charged through yet another thick concrete barrier within the facility, his grin wide and infectious. The startled MRD agents flinched as a cacophony of gunfire erupted behind him, bullets ricocheting off his broad back with a metallic clink, leaving only a slight sting. Confused expressions painted their faces. It was clear their weapons were no match for his formidable physique. "You're gonna need something stronger than that," Fred bellowed, his voice booming with exhilarating confidence as he lunged forward. With a powerful yet controlled thrust, he sent the agents sprawling back into the clustered mass of their comrades, the impact creating a wave of chaos among their ranks. "Gotta be careful not to hurt these guys too much. Don't want to kill these them," he reminded himself. With renewed determination, Fred turned his attention to the next obstacle standing in his way, a solid wall that loomed imposingly before him. He leaned forward, letting out an impressive roar that echoed through the facility. Then, with sheer force and an unwavering focus, he smashed through the concrete with ease, as if it were nothing more than fragile cardboard, sending debris flying in all directions. "Hands in the air. Now," commanded an MRD agent, his voice slicing through the tense air like a knife. A dozen agents, rifles clutched tightly in their hands, stood in a half-circle, expressions a mix of determination and incredulity, their steely gazes directed squarely at Pietro and St. John. They stood before the yawning entrance of the facility, where the once imposing steel and concrete wall that had stood like a sentinel was now inexplicably absent, as if it had vanished into thin air. "Quicksilver, if you would, St. John called out, his fingers hovering ominously over the triggers of his flamethrowers, a fierce glint igniting in his eyes. "Don't tell me what to do, smoke breath," Pietro retorted, his confident grin cutting through the tension, the corners of his mouth lifting in playful defiance. "Just don't blink." In a heartbeat, a whirlwind of dust erupted at his feet, and a dazzling blur of blue and silver streaked across the courtyard, manipulating time itself with a speed that seemed otherworldly. In a blink, Pietro came to an abrupt halt, a comical pile of rifles tumbling into his outstretched arms, leaving the MRD agents frozen in astonished silence, their minds racing to comprehend the absurdity of the scene. "What was it you said?" "St." John quipped, a mischievous grin blossoming across his face as flames flickered menacingly from his flamethrowers. A magnificent, fiery dragon curved through the air above him, its blazing form casting a spellbinding yet ominous glow, compelling the agents to stagger back in shock and terror. "Right, hands in the air." Pietro chuckled, delighting in the chaos as the flaming dragon swooped through the courtyard, its scorching breath forcing agents to tumble helplessly to the ground, their uniforms scorched and tattered. The anguished groans mingled with the hiss of flames, but against all odds, they were still drawing breath. "Now then, it's my time to shine," Pietro announced with exuberance, refocusing on the enormous, jagged holes left in the facility's facade by Fred's relentless charge. In a flash, he surged inside, his movements a blur of speed and purpose, ready to fulfill his part in the daring plan. With extraordinary velocity, Pietro navigated the maze of dimly lit hallways, his feet barely grazing the ground as he swiftly liberated the newly rescued mutants from their grim confinement. Like a tempest, he whisked them from their tiny, prison-like rooms, racing back through the paths carved by Fred and their new unlikely ally, the sound of his swift movements echoing like thunder in the silent facility. To Pietro, the world unfurled in slow motion. He plucked each captive mutant from their confines, swiftly carrying them away to the cave where the Brotherhood had gathered just hours earlier. What just happened?" Joanna Cargill stammered, her mind struggling to catch up as she attempted to grasp the surreal reality of her newfound freedom. She glanced around, absorbing the bewildered faces of her fellow mutants, each of them grappling with a sudden shift in their fate. The heavy shackles that had bound them were now mere shadows of their former selves, discarded metal clattering on the sandy ground. A soft thud distracted her as her own cuffs fell away, tumbling to earth with a reassuring finality. "What's going on?" Joanna murmured, her voice barely more than a breath, before stepping toward the cave's entrance, where several other mutants stood, their expressions reflecting a blend of confusion and wonder. She stepped into the brilliant sunlight, a wave of warmth enveloping her as she emerged from the shadows of captivity. The vast expanse of a bright blue sky stretched above her, and a small smile crept across her face, filling her lungs with a refreshing scent of crisp, clean air, a sharp contrast to the stagnant atmosphere of her former prison. Lance grunted, his brow furrowed and face glistening with sweat as he homed in on his surroundings. Violent tremors rocked the facility, sending dust and debris cascading down from the ceilings as he toppled another lookout tower. The agents stationed within scrambled to escape, their eyes flaring with panic as they turned to confront him. Before one could level a weapon in his direction, a long, sinuous pink tongue lashed out, swiftly ensnaring the agent's rifle. With a mighty tug, Todd yanked the firearm from the agent's grip and dropped from the wall he had been clinging to, moving with a fluid grace. He landed deftly, delivering a sharp kick to one agent's face that sent him sprawling to the ground, then pivoting to leap over to another agent just as he fumbled for his sidearm. Not one to stand idle, Lance focused his energy, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him. He summoned a tremor that rippled through the ground like a shockwave, collapsing the solid surface underneath the remaining agents and plunging them into a pit, where they were trapped beneath a cascade of rubble. Pain screams echoed around him, a cacophony of despair mingling with the sound of cracking bones as the unfortunate agents tumbled into their makeshift prison. Good riddance. Todd exclaimed, hopping up to Lance's side as they peered down into the chaos below. That makes 3. Come on, there are still a few more to destroy, Lance replied, wiping the sweat from his brow with an urgency born of adrenaline. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a throng of facility personnel spilling out from behind a nearby structure, their faces registering shock and disbelief at the sight of the 2 young Brotherhood members. Hey, are those employees? Todd asked, his voice tinged with surprise. Yeah, the very ones who kept our kind locked away in cages, Lance muttered, his gaze hardening as he glared at the bewildered figures before them. Drawing on his powers, he began to shake the earth beneath the gathered personnel. Wait, what are you doing? Todd questioned, concern etched across his features. Are you really going to crush them? They deserve this, Lance growled, images flooding his mind of fellow mutants, limbs and heads restrained, enduring unspeakable suffering. A wave of fury washed over him, transforming the bad taste in his mouth from seeing his fellow mutants living in such horrible conditions into a tempest of rage focused on those who had perpetuated such atrocities against his kin. As the ground trembled ominously, screams and shouts of panic erupted from the facility personnel, their faces pale with terror as they stumbled backward, desperately trying to escape the impending doom. But what about what Atomic said? Damn Atomic! Lance roared, his voice echoing with an intensity as he slammed his hands downwards, causing the earth below the personnel to split open with a deafening crack, sealing their fates in a cacophony of chaos. Screams of fear echoed as everyone fell into a deep trance where sharp, jagged rocks awaited them. As they were all about to fall to their deaths, a large glowing red sphere wrapped around them all. Everyone blinked in surprise and looked up to see a billowing white cape. Atomic said nothing to the people trapped in his grasp as he soared high into the azure sky, the ground shrinking away beneath him. Once he was high in the air, he cast his gaze downward at Lance and Todd. Lance stood defiant, his posture rigid and unyielding, while Todd cowered, anxiety flickering across his face like shadows in the fading light. We had an agreement, Atomic said, his voice a low rumble, barely audible above the wind's howl. No one dies. Yeah, screw that. Can't you see what these monsters did to us? What does this place represent? They deserve everything coming to them. Lance shouted, his fury emanating from him like heat waves, causing the earth below to tremble. Whose side are you really on? In response, Atomic fell silent, raising an arm with deliberate slowness. At his command, the ground erupted beneath Lance. A swirling mass of dirt and stone entangled him like a serpent. Lance's eyes widened in shock as he fought to harness his own power, but before he could react, a sharp prick at the side of his neck sent a wave of darkness washing over him. As his consciousness slipped away, he caught a glimpse of a glinting, glowing needle hovering against his skin. Don't worry, it was just propofol, an innocuous anesthetic, Atomic assured Todd, who was wide-eyed and trembling. With a flick of his wrist, he released Lance from his earthen prison. Now take him back to the rendezvous point. You two are done here. Todd gulped, swallowing his fear, and nodded vigorously. With urgency propelling him, he hoisted Lance over his shoulder and hopped away, moving as fast as his legs would carry him. I've seen you on the news. You're that hero from New York. Atomic, right? Why are you attacking us? One of the bolder individuals, a researcher, in the shimmering sphere asked, her gaze locked onto Atomic, a mixture of fear and curiosity in her eyes. I'm not here to attack anyone. I'm here to free those who were taken against their will and locked away within this facility, Atomic replied coldly, his tone chilling as he ascended. Instead of flying to the rendezvous point, he altered his course, flying away from the cave where all the freed mutants were being brought to and towards an open expanse a good distance away from the facility. As he descended, he gently placed the large group of people on the ground and dismantled his protective sphere amidst a flicker of light. What you all did here, to these people, to these children. I promise you, it will haunt you until the end of your days, Atomic said. He soared into the sky with those haunting words, leaving those he had saved to grapple with their mixed emotions, watching him fade into the distance. Dismantling the turrets and other aerial and outdoor defenses that the Nevada MRD-run facility had strategically placed along its heavily reinforced outer walls was no challenge for Atomic. His incredible speed and the ability to use his powers almost instantly enabled him to swiftly circle the expansive facility. He easily dismantled the formidable walls that kept people in and out. With just a thought, he shattered the very matter that made up the walls and defenses, rendering them useless against the impending assault. As the Brotherhood of Mutants advanced, they wasted no time executing their part of the plan. Atomic flew toward the center of the facility and placed a hand on the roof, concentrating on scanning the entire 3-mile expanse. This was a remarkable improvement from months ago, as he had once struggled to scan the X-Men's Blackbird with such efficiency. After 5 minutes of intense concentration, the blueprint of the facility materialized in his mind, detailing every room and corridor. It felt as though he had connected directly to the structure itself. With determination coursing through him, he focused with a level of intensity he had never encountered before. As waves of energy pulsed through the walls, roofs, floors, and pipes, he felt the delicate systems of the facility meld beneath his influence. Each pulse sent vibrations through the very essence of the structure, directing him toward the areas where the MRDs stored their most dangerous weapons. At the same time, he came across a stockpile of explosives that appeared to be intended to implode the facility. Without hesitation, Atomic transmuted every explosive and anything resembling a weapon into harmless fragments, but also meticulously disengaged doors, neutralizing any access points not intricately connected to the facility's central systems. With a gasp, he collapsed to the ground, out of breath and drenched in sweat. That was tough, Atomic gasped, slowly rising to his feet. But now, I don't have to worry about anyone grabbing any more weapons. Once he caught his breath, he couldn't shake his curiosity about the lone life signature detected at the lowest level of the facility, which appeared to be part of a secret area. In one of the rooms within this deep underground level, there was a single trapped person. Atomic would have released them from their bindings, but unfortunately, they were beyond his reach due to the depth of their confinement. He felt fortunate to have found them at all. He realized he would need to venture into the facility himself to rescue them. Why do they have someone all the way down there by themselves? He muttered. Flying off the rooftop, he glanced down just in time to see Lance and Todd standing a few yards away from a group of evacuating personnel. Come on. Hurry! Jubilation shouted, desperation lacing her voice as she urged the group of mutants hustling behind her. The echo of gunfire punctuated the air, and they flinched, seeking refuge against the cold concrete wall to their left. Get down! Dr. Robert roared, fists clenched around his weapon as he returned fire, the sharp crack of gunfire mingling with the chaos around them. 2 MRD agents loomed at the end of the hall, angry frowns spread across their faces. Damn traitor, one of them snarled, unleashing a relentless stream of bullets that tore through the air like a swarm of angry bees. Hug the wall! Robert barked, his heart racing as he glanced at the terrified children huddling behind him. Just then, a bullet sliced through the flesh of his left shoulder, causing a guttural cry of pain to escape his lips. No! Jubilation screamed, her heart pounding furiously as she scanned the darkened hallway. With a fierce determination, she aimed her hands and unleashed a brilliant display of pyrotechnics. A storm of colorful energy surged forth, striking the agents and momentarily throwing them off balance. Thinking quickly, she unleashed another blast, this time targeting the ceiling ahead. The deafening cracks reverberated through the air as the structure crumbled, a cascade of debris showering down and barricading the corridor. Doc! Jubilation rushed to Robert's side, horror coursing through her as blood painted his arm crimson. Oh my God! You're hurt. I'm okay, Robert gasped, forcing a weak smile as he surveyed the frightened group. Is anyone hurt? The mutants exchanged anxious glances, shaking their heads. Jubilation sighed in relief, briefly assessing her own unscathed form. "No, we're fine. But don't worry about me. We need to get you kids out of here," Robert insisted, the weight of urgency in his voice as he began to lead them through the maze of hallways, each step leaving a trail of crimson behind. But before they could escape, the wall before them erupted in a violent explosion. Instinctively, Robert shielded the teens behind him, raising a stolen pistol, his jaw clenched in determination. Jubilation, trembling but resolute, stood ready at his side, her powers crackling with energy. As the dust settled, Fred blinked, his expression shifting from confusion to clarity. Are you guys mutants?" he asked, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos. "Yeah," one of the members of the group replied, still shaking from adrenaline. "Cool. Follow the holes I made. That's the way out." Fred gestured backward, then barreled forward, smashing through walls like a juggernaut unleashed. "He's definitely one of the reasons everything is going to hell," Robert muttered, shaking his head. "Okay, kids, you heard him. Let's move." Without another thought, they followed the path of destruction. MRD agents lay knocked out, remnants of Fred's rampage scattered about the ruins of the facility. Minutes felt like seconds as they burst outside into the glaring sunlight, the sky a sharp contrast to the darkness they had just escaped. "How long has it been since I've seen the sun?" one of the young mutants breathed, awestruck. "I can't even remember," another muttered, eyes closed as the wind ruffled their hair, a moment of bliss before reality crashed down on them. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them as a large section of the facility behind began to quake violently. "We need to move, now." Jubilation called, her voice slicing through the air as they took off in a panic. "Come on, Doctor." Robert struggled to keep pace, his body weak from blood loss, lightheadedness clouding his thoughts. And then, his foot snagged on a loose stone, sending him sprawling to the ground. Jubilation's heart dropped as she skidded to a halt, others following suit. Could they leave him behind? "Come on, Doc." They shouted, desperation overtaking their fear. "Get up. Let's go." Without hesitation, Jubilation and Samuel Guthrie hoisted Robert to his feet. But no matter how fast they ran, the crumbling behemoth was hot on their heels. Panic surged as Robert, his breath shallow and strained, pushed the kids down, instinctively covering them with his body. Jubilation's heart raced as she braced for the worst, their breaths suspended in terror. Could this really be it? Time slowed, and all they could do was close their eyes and wish for a miracle. The sounds of crashing concrete echoed in their ears, a storm of chaos descending around them, and they awaited the inevitable with a mix of fear and despair. But after a few seconds of waiting, nothing happened. "What the hell?" Samuel gasped, his voice barely audible above the chaos, as he and the others looked up in awe at Atomic soaring over them, arms outstretched. Above him, the massive structure trembled and shook, held back by an immense construct of red energy that shimmered in the air. "Go!" Atomic grunted, his face set with fierce determination as the red wall began to splinter under the immense pressure. "Now!" Jubilation snapped out of her daze first, adrenaline surging through her veins like wildfire. "Move! Move!" she shouted, rallying the group as they sprinted away from impending disaster. Glancing back, she witnessed an extraordinary sight, a wave of crimson light engulfing the building, its form twisting and turning like a living thing. With a startling suddenness, the structure transformed into a gigantic heap of marshmallows, plummeting to the ground with a fluffy, harmless poof. Did that building just become a mountain of marshmallows? Jubilation exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "No way. I saw it too," someone shouted, pointing at the sugary mess. Emerging from the confectionery chaos, Atomic landed gracefully in front of them, shaking his head. "Are you all okay?" His voice was steady, despite the immense effort he'd just exerted. Yeah." Jubilation replied, still reeling from the bizarre spectacle. Atomic's gaze shifted rapidly, landing on Robert, who was wincing from a deep gunshot wound. Without a moment's hesitation, Atomic rushed over, his hands glowing with a soft light as he worked to stabilize Robert until they could reach medical assistance. "There's a safe zone 2 miles southwest of here," Atomic instructed, his tone urgent. With a swift motion, he stomped on the ground and summoned a gleaming yellow bus that burst into existence with a flash of dazzling light. "Get on this. Hurry!" The sight of the bus, a miraculous creation, left the group stunned, their confusion mingling with awe. But Robert, fueled by the urgency of the moment, quickly ushered everyone inside. Just before they pulled away, Robert looked back. "Thank you." Atomic nodded, his eyes scanning the chaotic scene unfolding before him as he rose into the air, vigilant and ready. Below, he noticed several MRD agents unconscious and subdued, either knocked out or buried beneath debris. To his right, several armored trucks sped away, kicking up clouds of dust as they escaped with personnel from the facility. With a steely resolve etched across his face, Atomic soared higher into the sky, driven by a strong sense of purpose. "It shouldn't take long for Pietro to finish," he muttered under his breath, casting a glance downward. There, amidst the shadows of the facility, he spotted the speedster's blurry form darting in and out, a streak of motion maneuvering through the chaos. "I doubt he's going to find the lowest level. I need to hurry and free whoever's trapped in there," Atomic said. In a single, fluid motion, Atomic dove into the facility, gliding through its dimly lit corridors. As he descended, he methodically double-checked each floor, scanning for signs of life. By the time he reached the last floor before the secret level, he noticed with a mix of admiration and exasperation that Pietro had already extracted everyone from the facility's clutches. "Speedsters are so broken," Atomic said, shaking his head with a hint of disbelief. In a flash of blinding light, he opened the floor beneath him, revealing a dark abyss that led down to the secret level. As he floated downwards, a protective shield formed instinctively around him, shimmering like a second skin. Suddenly, turrets sprang to life around him, emerging from hidden compartments in the walls and floor. They unleashed a furious barrage of gunfire, the bullets cracking against his barrier like raindrops on glass. With a calm gaze, Atomic extended his hands, unleashing a wave of incandescent light. The turrets shuddered and transformed, their metallic forms transforming into bursts of smoke. Now more vigilant, Atomic cautiously navigated through the eerie dimness of the level, each step resonating with a weight of urgency. The air was thick with a scent of cold metal and lingering copper as he approached the room where the lone captive waited. However, as he neared the doorway, he halted at the sight of a cracked door to his left that seemed to beckon him closer. Curiosity piqued, he stepped inside, gasping at the shocking scene laid before him. The room was something made of nightmares. Pictures of dead young mutants with their bodies sliced apart covered a workstation as several medical tables sat along the wall. Dozens upon dozens of crumpled research notes lay strewn across the cold, hard floor, each sheet bearing the frantic scrawls of a mind in turmoil. It was as if the papers had been hastily gathered in a moment of desperation, only to be abandoned in a chaotic flurry of thoughts. To Atomic, the room felt like a twisted den of torture, thick with a palpable scent of anxiety and despair. The flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Every corner seemed to echo with the weight of failed experiments and unfulfilled ambitions. He wanted to leave, but before he could muster himself to do so, he turned and saw a lone corpse lying on the ground. Alone and forgotten. Walking over to it, Atomic looked down at the mutilated body of a young 16-year-old boy. His body had been picked apart. Quickly removing his helmet, Wyatt turned away, nausea clawing at his throat, and he couldn't help but throw up. "Christ," he muttered through gritted teeth. His eyes landed on a document lying nearby. An image of the dead boy stared back at him, a reminder of a life that had been extinguished far too soon. His name was printed at the top in bold letters. John Proudstar. With a heavy heart, Wyatt kneeled beside John's lifeless form. He placed a hand on the cold, still chest of the dead teen. "I'm sorry this happened to you," Wyatt whispered, his voice small. He felt an overwhelming weight of grief and guilt wash over him as he summoned his powers. John's body, no longer a vessel of life and now vulnerable to Wyatt's powers, began to shift and break down in sorrowful resignation. In mere moments, his body transformed into an urn, a steel shell containing John's cremated remains. Wyatt's heart ached at the reality of what he had done. With a heavy sigh and a deep sense of loss, he stood up, steeliness returning to his spine as he donned his helmet once more after cleansing his mouth with his powers. He gently placed the urn within a glowing sphere, where it would float behind him. As he exited the dimly lit room, Atomic took a moment to scan every shadowy corner with his exceptional powers. With painstaking precision, he copied and memorized the grim details contained within the Chamber of Death, ensuring he gathered vital evidence. Amidst the scattered documents and sinister research papers, one name emerged repeatedly, striking a chord deep within him. Bolivar Trask. A surge of fury ignited within him, momentarily halting his advance. He turned sharply, extending his hand toward the heart of the room, which now felt suffocatingly oppressive. With a decisive snap of his fingers, a thunderous explosion of fire erupted, consuming everything in its path. The inferno churned with a vivid orange and crimson hue, reducing the macabre contents of the room to mere ashes that fluttered like dark confetti in the aftermath. This devastating technique was inspired by Roy Mustang, a formidable alchemist from a beloved show he had watched in another life. It required a deft mastery of oxygen manipulation, employing his control to create precise vacuums and replace the space with nitric oxide. All it took was a single spark to unleash an overwhelming blast of flame. This ability, while incredibly potent, also bore a lethal edge. Though Atomic refrained from wielding it against living beings, the destruction of such a malevolent sanctum left him with no moral hesitations. He felt a grim satisfaction as he decimated the room, ensuring its dark legacy would be eradicated. Leaving the charred ruins behind him, Atomic navigated the cold, metallic corridors until he faced two imposing reinforced steel doors. With a mere wave of his hand, the formidable barrier succumbed to his power, melting away into shimmering pools of liquid, as though they were nothing more than ice on a blazing summer day. Huh? Why are you bozos here today? Why is everything shaking? A feminine voice, laced with a thick accent, asked from the shadows of the expansive, cold room. Atomic summoned several orbs of light that burst forth, flooding the room with a soft golden glow that danced across the stark, gray walls. There, perched on a steel chair that looked as unyielding as the room itself, sat a girl with cascading waves of orange-red hair. A thick blindfold concealed her striking features, while a white straitjacket bound her limbs tightly, the material stark against her pale skin. Chains clinked ominously, tethered to the walls and ceiling, ensuring she remained trapped in her desolation. "I'm not one of them. I'm here to help you," Atomic said, a little thrown off by the girl's reaction. With a flick of his wrist, the restraints vanished, leaving only the echoes of her confinement. Kneeling before the now liberated girl, he moved deliberately, careful not to startle her. Slowly, he peeled away the blindfold, allowing her to acclimate to the warm light surrounding them. As she blinked, adjusting to the brightness, her dull green eyes roamed the room, suspicion and confusion flickering across her features. They finally settled on Atomic, and in that moment, recognition sparked within him. "Wait a minute. Elizabeth Olsen? No, it's Wanda." Atomic's mind raced as he processed the reality before him, a 16-year-old Wanda Maximoff. "Who are you?" Wanda asked, her voice thick with curiosity at seeing someone dressed so colorfully. Power Ranger." "No, I'm not a Power Ranger. I'm here to free you," Atomic said, a bit exasperated. He then extended his hand toward her. "What do you say?" Wanda furrowed her brow, her gaze drifting through the stark white expanse that had imprisoned her for the last year, a tumult of emotions churning within her. "I say let's go," she replied, taking his gloved hand with a tentative yet determined grip. "I'm Wanda, by the way. Wanda Maximoff." "I'm Atomic," he said. "Now let's get you out of here." Eric Laneshare hovered high in the sky, the crumbling MRD facility visible in the distance. The sun's warm rays cast long shadows behind him as he surveyed the chaos below. The once imposing structure trembled under the weight of destruction, and billowing clouds of smoke spiraled upward, twisting and dancing like phantoms in the wind. He shifted his gaze downward, where over 200 young and middle-aged mutants stood in a collective throng. Their faces were illuminated by a mix of relief, quiet joy, and bewilderment as they stared wide-eyed at their newfound freedom. To Eric, these individuals were not just survivors, they were potential recruits, future members of his brotherhood. Each grateful expression he saw filled him with a sense of purpose, fueling his ambition to dismantle the world's entrenched power structures and build a future for his kind. However, despite the large number of mutants, he failed to find one specific individual, his estranged daughter, Wanda. To Eric, his children held little significance. They were merely the byproducts of a momentary lapse in judgment, a fleeting weakness he rarely acknowledged. If not for their inheritance of the X gene, their existence would have slipped entirely from his mind. Nonetheless, as mutants, their lives could not be easily disregarded. Eric understood the implications. Abandoning his own offspring would not only tarnish his reputation but also undermine the trust of his future followers. As he remained vigilant, Eric observed his son, Pietro, animatedly engaging with the gathering of mutants below. They expressed their gratitude, offering heartfelt thanks for freeing them from the oppressive confines of the facility. For a brief moment, Pietro glanced up at Eric, only to quickly avert his gaze. Pietro's abilities were undeniably impressive, granting him extraordinary speed that could easily turn the tide in any conflict. Yet, Eric couldn't shake the disappointment he felt regarding the boy's erratic behavior and lack of focus. In hindsight, Eric regretted leaving Pietro in the care of a carefree guardian, whose absence of proper guidance and discipline had done little to cultivate the boy's behavior. Wanda, his only daughter, had been placed in the care of her birth mother and her new husband in Sokovia from an early age. Eric had maintained a distant watch over her for the day her mutation finally arrived. It wasn't until a few years ago that he was informed by one of his spies in Sokovia that Wanda's X gene had finally awakened. This had been a relief to Eric. As the years passed, Wanda's continued dormant X gene had caused him to grow increasingly disappointed in her. Much to Eric's chagrin, this lack of visible ability, compounded by her step-parents' loving support, led him to lose interest in her existence. That all changed when her abilities finally activated. The day it happened was when Wanda had recently traveled to Washington for some unknown reason. On the very day of her arrival in the United States, her powers erupted into the open. Eric watched from the security tapes one of his loyal government subordinates had sent him with a mixture of awe and pride as she unleashed a torrent of red energy, devastating a large section of a parking garage. Unfortunately, the chaotic scene attracted the attention of the MRD agents, who swiftly descended upon her, forcibly taking her to their facility in Nevada. The emergence of Wanda's abilities ignited a spark of curiosity within Eric, a burning desire to understand the full extent of her powers. This newfound interest solidified his resolve to mount an attack on the facility that held her captive. If her capabilities were as formidable as he anticipated, Wanda could become a pivotal asset in his overarching plans, collaborating alongside Wyatt in a future that promised to reshape the world for all mutants. Was my informant lying about Wanda being here? No, that fool wouldn't dare. Eric thought. Gliding downward, Eric floated ominously over the gathered mutants, his piercing gaze locking onto his son. Pietro. Are these all the captives? Yes, Faith, Magneto. Pietro's voice trembled as he quickly counted everyone. I double and triple checked, there's no one left inside the building besides a handful of those damn agents. Before Eric could respond, a school bus broke through the endless desert, drawing all eyes toward it. It came to a jolting halt a few feet away, and a man stepped out, his shoulder drenched in dry blood. Robert scanned the crowd of liberated mutants, his heart racing as recognition flickered across their faces. Turning back to the bus, he nodded at the others, who hesitated before stepping into the chaos. Jubilation and Samuel emerged, their expressions a mix of awe and fear as they took in the mass of their fellow captives. But when their gazes locked onto Eric, a cold shiver crawled down their spines. They could instinctively tell that the floating figure was a force to be reckoned with. You are not a mutant, Eric intoned, his voice a low rumble as he fixed Robert with a fierce glare. In a quick, instinctual move, Jubilation and Samuel positioned themselves protectively in front of Robert. Leave him alone. He's not like everyone back there. Jubilation shouted, the fervor in her voice betraying her fear. She's right. Don't touch him. Samuel roared, his shaking fists clenched tightly as he exchanged worried glances with the others, who nodded in agreement. Who are you? Robert asked, maintaining a facade of calm, though his pulse quickened. Are you teamed up with the other guy back there? The one in white. For now, Eric replied, the danger in his voice thickening the air around them. He offered no semblance of warmth and stepped away from the group as though weighing his options. Engaging Robert could risk the fragile trust that Atomic had placed in him. For now, he would leave the human be. His gaze shifted to Mystique, poised elegantly near the cave entrance, an aura of anticipation surrounding her. It's time we finish this. Without a word, Mystique transformed into a large hawk and took flight, her sudden metamorphosis startling the two young mutants beside her. The gathered crowd below watched in anxious silence as Eric and Mystique soared off toward the facility. Uncertainty gnawed at the edges of their thoughts. What were Eric and Mystique planning for their former prison, and for those still within its walls? I don't understand. Why are you helping these people? Wanda asked, her voice tinged with disbelief as she trailed behind Atomic. Her former drab jumpsuit had been replaced by soft, comfortable clothing and a pair of brand new sneakers. Atomic paused momentarily to glance back at her, concern flickering in his eyes before he returned his focus to the task at hand. He carefully maneuvered the unconscious MRD agents out of the crumbling facility, their bodies slumped limply over his large stretcher construct. The cavernous holes torn through the walls, destructive byproducts of Fred's earlier rampage, provided easy access for him to transport the remaining personnel to safety. Thankfully, Fred had already vacated the premises and was making his way back to the rendezvous point. "I know what these men did to you all was horrific," Atomic said, his voice steady yet filled with empathy. "But if I leave them here, the facility could collapse and crush them. I can't just let them here to die." Wanda's lips curled into a frown, a mixture of anger and confusion swirling within her. "That's really stupid. After everything they did to me, to everyone, these guys deserve to be buried beneath this place," she said. Atomic fell silent, his heart heavy with her bitterness. As he continued to gather more agents, he struggled with the impulse to impress upon her that all life has intrinsic value. But the images of Wanda's trapped state stopped him, her days spent trapped in that dark, suffocating room and the anguish she must have endured at their hands. He understood that her fury was justified, and it weighed heavily on him. And so, he kept silent. Wanda huffed in frustration, her gaze shifting to the inexplicably delicious sandwich Atomic had prepared for her earlier. She lifted it to her lips and took a hearty bite, savoring the delicious taste the weird out-of-nowhere food held. "Did you do all of this yourself?" she asked, her voice muffled by the sandwich as she surveyed the devastation strewn around them. "No, I had help," Atomic replied, leading them both outside. Their methods were a lot more violent than I would have liked, but they got results. Wanda paused, her senses awakening to the vibrant blue sky above, a stark contrast to the darkness they had just escaped. A smile broke through her frustration, momentarily brightening her expression now with every MRD agent and other personnel that had failed to evacuate outside. Atomic couldn't shake the relieved sigh that escaped him. Miraculously, it seemed that no one had perished in the chaos of the plan, aside from that close call he had with Lance. That didn't mean there weren't any casualties. Within the facility, Atomic had run across a few dead agents who had several bullet holes and one with a stab wound from a pair of scissors. After scanning their bodies, he came to the conclusion that their deaths were the result of infighting due to their deaths having occurred before he or the Brotherhood commenced their assault of the facility. Their corpses were brought along as well. "I've been meaning to ask," Wanda said, her curiosity piqued as she glanced at the floating urn hovering behind Atomic, encased in a gentle glow. "What's that?" "That's an urn. It carries the remains of someone that didn't make it," he replied quietly, the weight of those words heavier than the object itself. "Oh," she murmured, her expression softening as she contemplated the solemnity of his task. As the haunting memory of the teenager's lifeless body surged into his mind, a fierce wave of anger constricted around Atomic's chest. The fury was directed not at anyone else, but at himself. The weight of regret bore down on him, relentless and suffocating. In that moment, he felt powerless. He could never go back and change what had happened to John Proudstar. Perhaps if he had arrived sooner, he could have made a difference, but there was no point in dwelling on what-ifs. He knew all too well that such thoughts led only to a spiral of despair. "All I can do now is bring his remains back to his family," Atomic murmured, his voice thick with emotion as his gaze fell upon the unconscious agent sprawled before him. A sudden vision flashed through his mind, ground beneath the agents' bodies transforming into a river of molten lava, engulfing them in vengeful flames. A primal urge to punish these men surged within him, to make them feel the weight of their actions, to instill in them a sense of regret that would mirror his own. Wanda, standing close by, noticed the shift in Atomic. She blinked, her focus intensifying as she observed the clenched fists trembling at his sides. His shoulders quaked under the burden of his emotions as if he were a coiled spring ready to unleash all the pent-up energy. With a deep breath, she closed her eyes and reached out to connect with him, an ability she had learned under the harsh, enforced training she received within the facility. Wanda was immediately overwhelmed by the torrent of anger radiating from his core. Yet, as quickly as it had come, that fury subsided, giving way to a profound sadness and a haunting sense of regret. "Okay, let's see who you really are," Wanda thought. Once the haze of anger cleared, Wanda delved into the depths of his mind. Initially, she encountered a barrier that prevented her from fully exploring his thoughts, but it vanished moments later. Though briefly puzzled by this obstacle, she pressed on to peer into his consciousness. Wanda managed to catch glimpses of his past, a collage of memories filled with warmth and kindness. She saw him performing countless selfless acts, helping strangers, comforting friends, and standing up for those who could not defend themselves. It became evident to her that beneath the turmoil, Atomic, or Wyatt Wilkins, was a genuinely good soul at heart. Leaving his mind, Wanda shook her head slightly, grounding herself in the reality around her. She watched Atomic take a deep, steadying breath. It seems that our grand mission is now complete. Wanda gasped, her heart racing as she looked up to see a man flying through the air, his red and purple suit shimmering like a beacon against the sky. The moment he spotted her, his expression shifted, his eyes narrowing with intensity as she moved closer to Atomic. And a very successful mission at that, Eric declared, landing with a heavy thud, his hands clasped behind his back. Mystique descended gracefully behind him, shedding her bird transformation with an air of urgency. Now do you see it, Atomic? By uniting our strengths, we can shatter any barrier that stands in our way. That can wait, Atomic shot back, urgency lacing his voice. We need to get everyone as far from here as possible before the government sends in their reinforcements. This place is going to become a battleground if we don't hurry. With a swift motion, he summoned a massive platform to carry the unconscious agents aloft. But then, a deafening crash erupted as a steel beam hurtled through the air, shattering his construct into splinters. What are you doing? Eric's voice was a low growl, thick with tension. Are you seriously helping these people? These monsters who captured and tortured our kind? Yes. They need medical attention. Atomic's voice rose in protest. Your Brotherhood may not have killed anyone, but they didn't hold back. There are men and women here with shattered bones and critical injuries. Enough. Eric roared, his face twisting with fury. I've indulged your compassion for too long. Do you really think I'll stand by while you help those humans? The same creatures who tear my kin from their homes and drag them off to these camps? No. They deserve no mercy. They deserve to be obliterated. He extended his arms wide, and the very structure of the 3-mile-wide facility groaned in response, with steel beams bending and walls buckling under the immense pressure of his power. With a terrifying screech, jagged fragments tore free, twisting and warping into deadly javelins that glinted menacingly in the fading light. Eric's eyes blazed with fury as he unleashed his chaos. With a flick of his wrist, the lethal javelins erupted into the air, slicing through the sky like shooting stars. The projectiles descended with terrifying speed toward the unsuspecting facility personnel below. Atomic and Wanda, being so close to the agents, found themselves in Eric's crosshairs, with the deadly missiles hurtling toward them and no time to escape. Wanda gasped as Atomic dashed, his strong grip encircling her waist as he propelled them toward the throng of agents. Her heart raced, a thrilling mix of fear and disbelief coursing through her. The landscape below blurred as they approached the heart of the imminent danger, and just as she opened her mouth to scream, Atomic raised one hand toward the sky. In an instant, the terrifying shards of flying steel javelins morphed into delicate leaves, transforming the scene from peril to beauty. Still cradled in Atomic's arms, Wanda watched in mesmerized wonder as the foliage swirled gracefully through the air, glistening in the sunlight before gently cascading down around her like a vibrant autumn shower. Is this his power? Wanda mused, captivated by the ethereal display as she glanced up at Atomic. His sleek helmet caught the sunlight, shimmering like a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. She remembered how he had previously wielded his abilities to conjure garments and sustenance with mere thought, leaving her astonished by his creativity. But this? This was something entirely different, a breathtaking transformation that turned a life-threatening assault into a moment of serene beauty. It left her feeling insignificant in comparison. The vastness of her own abilities felt dwarfed by his extraordinary gift. Stop this, Magneto. We don't have to fight, Atomic shouted as he gently set Wanda down. He stepped protectively in front of her, his heart racing at the possible fight with the master of magnetism. Wyatt barely had time to react when he felt the ground tremble beneath him. With a swift motion, he raised a shimmering barrier just in time to block a deadly barrage of rebar and steel pipes that hurtled toward them. I'm done talking, Eric growled, his eyes narrowing with cold determination. I see now that I have no use for someone like you in my future world. As he lifted his hand, a menacing growl of helicopter blades sliced through the air, drawing his attention. Damn pests, he spat, irritation flashing across his face as he turned to confront the swarm of government attack helicopters soaring toward them. Without hesitation, He flicked his wrist, and steel pillars erupted from the crumbling remains of the facility, spiraling into the sky like angry sentinels. A cruel grin spread across Eric's face as he fixed his gaze on Atomic. "If you love these humans so much, you can mourn for them," Eric sneered. Without hesitation, Eric flicked his wrist, and steel pillars erupted from the crumbling remains of the facility, spiraling into the sky like angry missiles. A twisted grin spread across Eric's face as he fixed his gaze on Atomic. "If you love these humans so much, you can mourn for them," Eric sneered. "No." Atomic surged forward, his heart pounding, ready to launch himself into the sky, but suddenly froze. He couldn't abandon Wanda and the unconscious MRD personnel to Eric and Mystique. "It's okay. Go," Wanda urged, stepping forward with her hands alight with fierce, swirling red energy. "I don't understand you. I still think that these people don't deserve to be saved after everything they've done. But I know now that you're not the kind of person to stand back when others are in danger. Not even if they're cruel bastards. So go. I'll make sure nothing happens to them. But when this is over, you owe me." Atomic stared at her, a mix of appreciation and urgency in his eyes. He didn't want to leave Wanda alone with Eric and Mystique, but he hoped that her relationship with her father would steady his hand. "Thank you." He placed the floating urn down and then concentrated his power, feeling the energy electrify around him. He shot Eric a fierce glare from behind his helmet. "This isn't over." With a thunderous blast of energy, Atomic rocketed into the sky. Wanda watched him ascend, a tired frown etching across her face. "What am I getting myself into?" she whispered, turning her gaze to Eric and Mystique. "Listen, I don't know who you are, but you need to back off." "This has to be a joke," Mystique scoffed, disbelief thick in her voice. "You're willing to defend the very ones who imprisoned you? Are you mad?" "Trust me, Blue Lady. No one wants to see these guys get what they deserve more than I do. But I gave Atomic my word," Wanda shot back, her eyes igniting with crackling red energy. "So, step back." Eric chuckled darkly, stepping closer. His amusement evaporated when a wave of chaotic red energy slashed the ground before him, leaving a jagged gash that sizzled ominously. Wanda stood her ground, her glowing eyes locked onto his. "Extraordinary," Eric said, his gaze fixed on Wanda's powers with a mix of awe and wonder. "Back off, old man," Wanda warned, raising her hands, pulsing with raw power. "Ah, how amusing. You truly don't recognize me, do you, my child?" Eric intoned, the air thick with tension. He slowly lifted his hands to his head and slid off his helmet with deliberate slowness. "To think you would forget the face of your true father." Wanda's eyes widened in horror, disbelief crashing over her like a tidal wave. "Why, you're—" Warrant Officer Hughes blinked in disbelief as he gazed out at the MRD facility, a ghost of its former self, as its battered silhouette could be seen in the distance. To him, the once formidable stronghold of cutting-edge technology and research development now lay in ruin, a haunting wasteland of blackened debris and swirling plumes of thick, acrid smoke. In response to the facility's emergency call, Hughes and his squadron had been scrambled to respond. But as he surveyed the ruin, he realized too late that their mission had changed. It was no longer one of providing air support but of salvaging whatever remained. At best, he prayed that the inevitable casualties would be low. "Hughes, do you see that? Down in front of the facility." Warrant Officer Melendez exclaimed, pointing urgently. Hughes squinted, focusing on two vividly colored figures in red engaged in a fierce standoff, a blue-skinned woman beside one of them and, behind the other in white, a young girl and several unconscious facility personnel at their backs. "What the hell is going on?" Hughes muttered. His heart sank as massive chunks of the facility broke free from their foundations, hanging eerily in the air for a fleeting moment. It was as if they were caught in an unseen grasp, poised in suspense before they plummeted toward their helicopters with terrifying velocity, like lethal projectiles unleashed. "Shit. Evasive maneuvers." Hughes barked, yanking the controls to veer his chopper aside, followed by his squadron in synchronized urgency. But one helicopter failed to move in time under the immense pressure of the chaos. A bone-chilling explosion erupted behind them, a deafening roar that seemed to split the very air. A massive steel beam, propelled by some invisible force, had sliced through the rear of Warrant Officer Hadeland's aircraft, tearing off the tail with a ferocity that made it appear fragile, like it was crafted from mere paper. The shock wave reverberated through the cockpit as the pilot struggled to maintain control. Shit. I'm hit. I'm hit. Hadlin and his co-pilot yelled, panic-stricken, as the helicopter spiraled uncontrollably toward the ground, trailing flames like a comet of doom. The remaining pilots in the air were powerless, forced to hear the horrific cries as their comrades plummeted into oblivion. Then, out of nowhere, a red and white blur streaked past them, faster than the eye could see. What the hell was that? Melendez shouted, watching in disbelief as the blur barreled toward their falling ally. Atomic rocketed through the air and grasped the tumbling helicopter's fuselage with the grace of a guardian angel. He assessed the frantic pilots within, noting the missing tail but understanding that simply fixing it wouldn't save the aircraft. He could stop the helicopter from falling and fix its tail, but he was short on time. Hold on. Atomic thought, adrenaline surging through him as he quickly undid the access hatch on top of the helicopter. With a swift motion, he secured both pilots within protective spheres and leaped away from the doomed aircraft. The helicopter crashed behind them in a spectacular explosion, debris spraying across the sky like a fiery flower in bloom. You two all right? Atomic asked, his voice steady amidst the chaos. Yeah. Hadlin stammered, still shaken but alive, while his co-pilot nodded vigorously. Good. Now brace yourselves. Atomic shouted as he landed them safely on the ground. Without missing a beat, he rocketed back into the tumultuous fray. The scene before him was a whirlwind of chaos. The remnants of the MRD facility loomed ominously, their jagged edges glinting as they began to rise like a grotesque titan made of steel. Rising into the sky, steel projectiles, sharp and menacing, tore free from the monstrous mass, their trajectories aimed directly at the helicopter squadron, cutting through the smoky air with a deadly intent. Eve, connect me with the pilots, Atomic instructed as he raced through the air, his heart pounding. Connection secured. Eve, his AI companion, confirmed. Listen, you need to turn these helicopters around. You're all in serious danger if you keep flying this way. Atomic called out, urgency dripping from his voice. What the hell? Who are you? Are you the reason for this? Hughes shot back through the comms, distrust simmering in his words. Now is not the time for questions. Turn around, now. Atomic yelled, his eyes darting to the chaotic scene above him. Hold on, Hughes. I recognize him. It's Atomic. He's some kind of superhero. My kids talk about him all the time, Warrant Officer Gibbs interjected, his recognition breaking through the panic. What the hell are you doing out here in Nevada? Before Atomic could utter a word, the very foundations of the entire MRD facility erupted into the sky in a cataclysmic display of fury, with twisting steel beams and razor-sharp metal shards shooting skyward like furious harbingers of destruction, arcing toward them with lethal intent. And there, soaring above the chaotic maelstrom, hovered Eric Lanesair, a dark and ominous figure with a deep, charred mark seared across his chest. Atomic's heart raced, knowing he had to act quickly. The lives of the helicopter pilots remained at stake, and in the back of his mind, he couldn't help but worry about Wanda and the personnel left behind in the rubble of the facility. With a determined roar and fierce power surging through him, he dove toward the oncoming storm, ready to confront the master of magnetism. Why you're... Wanda's eyes widened, disbelief mingling with the growing fury coursing through her veins. A soft gasp escaped her lips, quickly morphing into an explosive rage as her eyes ignited with a seething red glow. You're the good-for-nothing bastard who abandoned me. Of all the responses Eric could have anticipated, he never expected to hear such devastating words. Before he could muster a reply, a violent surge of chaotic red energy crashed through the air, hitting him like a freight train and sending the master of magnetism flying several meters back, pain ricocheting through his body. What? Mystique's confusion turned to horror as she turned around, only to be met by Eric's staggering form struggling to rise from the wreckage. Her shock quickly turned to agony when another wave of energy flung her into a nearby pile of debris, knocking her out cold. What do you think you're doing, you petulant child? Eric's voice rumbled, a low growl echoing with authority as he levitated his helmet back into place. Hovering above the scene with a stormy glare fixed on his face, he declared, I am your father. How dare you? My father is Matei Burian. You're just a genetic donor. Don't you dare assume the title of my father after abandoning me and my mother. Wanda screamed, her fury radiating as her body unexpectedly lifted off the ground. Power surged within her as she extended her arms, a torrent of chaotic magic swirling and crackling around. With a shrill scream, she unleashed a colossal wave of energy toward Eric. No longer caught off guard, Eric reacted with instinctual precision, conjuring a massive steel wall to shield himself from the incoming onslaught. But to his astonishment, Wanda's attack pushed against his barrier with almost primal force. Incredible. Such raw power. Eric's mind raced, the potential of her abilities igniting a mixture of pride and dread within him. Yet, he realized the truth. She was untrained, her power an untamed beast full of potential. Exhaustion washed over Wanda, beads of sweat cascading down her face as she struggled to maintain her concentration. With her energy spent, she descended to the ground and collapsed to one knee, her limbs trembling as the weight of her unleashed magic threatened to overwhelm her. None of her enforced training sessions by the MRD facility had prepared her for such a level of power. Did I really do that? Wanda whispered, disbelief creeping into her voice as she tried to gather herself, fixing her gaze on Eric. There was a fire in her eyes, but her knees buckled beneath her, the effort of standing draining her strength. After regaining his composure, Eric inspected the damage to his suit, a charred testament to Wanda's violent power. Though it remained intact, he could feel the toll it had taken. His gaze shifted back to Wanda, her defiance flickering like a dying candle amidst the chaos surrounding them. "You're on your last legs, girl. Why are you still defending those animals?" Eric asked, his voice tense as Wanda clung to the remnants of her resolve. "Even in this state, I'll protect them," she gasped, her body unsteady and swaying dangerously close to the ground. "I gave my word." Eric's heart twisted. Her loyalty was as infuriating as it was admirable. Taking in her weakened form, he shook his head, the weight of their shared blood settling heavily on his shoulders. "Remember this, Wanda," he warned, his voice low and resonating with deep intensity. "You are my daughter. And I will return for you, whether you want me to or not." Wanda's glare pierced through the haze of exhaustion, a spark of defiance flaring within her as Eric ascended, retreating into the darkening sky, the entire MRD facility floating behind him. As the shadows of his figure vanished from her sight, Wanda fell to her knees, surrendering to the weariness that enveloped her. She crumpled to her side, her eyelids fluttering, fighting a losing battle against the encroaching darkness. "Yeah, you better run, you deadbeat," she whispered right as exhaustion lulled her to sleep. "Get away from here. Now." Atomic bellowed, his voice piercing through the chaos around him as he turned to face the monolith of steel and metal in the distance. With a surge of determination, he propelled himself forward, charging at the gargantuan steel monstrosity hovering ominously in the sky. "You don't have to tell me twice." Hughes shouted, his heart racing at the terrifying sight of the skybound fortress. "Everyone, move back. Let's get the hell out of here." In an instant, the remaining helicopters swung around in a synchronized retreat, their whirring blades slicing through the air, while one descended to retrieve Hadlin and his co-pilot. "Okay. I can do this. I can definitely do this." Atomic reassured himself, his mind racing as he surveyed the monstrous structure looming overhead. "God, please let me pull this off." The first wave of razor-sharp steel projectiles hurtled toward him like a storm of death, but Atomic stood firm. With a defiant wave of his hands, he unleashed a torrent of crimson energy that morphed into a titanic fist, smashing through the barrage and sending shards hurtling into the void. Steeling himself, Atomic soared into the heart of the storm, weaving through the onslaught of deadly metal with breathtaking precision. He had to reach Eric. Once the Mun was in range, it was game over. Suddenly, a shard of rebar sliced through the air, poised to pierce his back. But just as it was about to strike, it halted, frozen in midair, mere inches from impact. This was the culmination of Atomic's mastery over his version of the Infinity Technique, an incredible ability that allowed him to amplify the air's density around him, creating an impenetrable barrier. Anything that dared to strike him would be forced to a standstill, suspended before reaching his body. Yet this incredible power came at a steep price. To maintain such complex control, Atomic had to divert half his mental focus to sustain the technique, restraining his other abilities. He wielded this double-edged sword only in the most dire of battles. Like now, as he squared off against one of the planet's most formidable mutants. Atomic glanced back at the rebar with grim determination, his hands crashing together in a thunderous clap. A shockwave of crimson light erupted from his palms, vaporizing everything within 30 yards, turning steel and concrete to nothingness. Eric glared, frustration etching deeper lines across his face as he watched Atomic evade his onslaught. Yet, buried beneath his irritation was an unmistakable realization. This young hero was drowning in chaos, floundering in a battle far beyond anything he had faced before. Especially as he tried to reach him to deliver a winning blow. But Eric was no fool. He would keep away from Atomic's power range. Is this truly all you are capable of, Wyatt? No, I know you can reach much greater heights than these. Let's turn up the heat, shall we? Eric said as he raised both hands toward the tempest above. With effortless malevolence, he began warping the MRD facility, twisting the mighty structure inward until grotesque tendrils of steel emerged, snaking down like sinister claws poised to tear Atomic apart. Despite his opinions of Atomic's childish outlook, Eric couldn't help but be curious at how far he could push the young man. To see just how far his abilities could take him. As the titanic metal appendages loomed overhead, Atomic's heart raced, and his breath caught in his throat. Holy shit! He breathed, momentarily stunned, eyes wide as a steel tendril lashed out from beneath him, striking like a viper. He gasped, feeling the force throw him into a dizzying, chaotic spin through the air. Thanks only to his infinity technique, he narrowly avoided being shredded, the tendril pushing him aside with raw, brutal force. Finding his balance once more in the swirling tempest, Atomic's eyes widened in horror as all 20 colossal tendrils converged upon him at once, a symphony of death and destruction unleashed. At a safe distance, the squadron of helicopters hovered with bated breath, their cameras capturing every breathtaking moment as Atomic valiantly fought to evade the lunging steel tendrils. Awe filled the crew's eyes as they witnessed an intense struggle that felt almost biblical. Several kilometers away, a massive gathering of 200 mutants stood frozen in disbelief, their hearts pounding as they gazed at the floating fortress that had once been their prison. The members of the Brotherhood could only stare, mouths agape, as they absorbed the immense power displayed by their leader. With a low groan, Mystique shook off the remnants of her fatigue and slowly rose to her feet. She looked up just in time to see the colossal steel monstrosity lashing out at Atomic, and an unmistakable thrill coursed through her veins. The sheer spectacle of the battle ignited an awe she could not contain. Not far away, Wanda watched from her sitting position as the ground quaked violently beneath her. A monumental steel spike plummeted 15 kilometers away with a thunderous crash, sending vibrations that rattled her bones. She gasped, her eyes wide with wonder as she turned her gaze skyward, witnessing Eric orchestrating the steel behemoth in its relentless assault on Atomic. In that moment, Wanda felt both powerless and exhilarated, completely captivated by the cataclysm unfolding before her. Her heart raced as she watched the titanic clash from her vantage point. Slicing through the skies with unstoppable determination, Atomic soared alongside one of the massive steel tendrils that twisted ominously in the air. With a fierce grip, he slammed a hand onto its surface, unleashing a wave of crimson energy that erupted along its length, transforming the cold metal into a cascading rain. With a deft flick of his wrist, Eric severed the tendril before the luminous wave could reach the vast armored body of his formidable steel beast. He drew his arm back, fingers splayed, and unleashed a torrent of steel spikes hurtling toward Atomic like meteors raining from the heavens. With remarkable agility, Atomic spun to face the deadly barrage, snapping his fingers in rapid succession. Each snap ignited a series of fiery explosions that roared to life in a brilliant display, obliterating the spikes into nothingness. But from his blind spot, a metal beam smashed into his side with bone-crushing force, sending him spiraling through the sky. Although his infinity granted him incredible defense, the jarring impact reverberated through his body, fragments of pain lacing his senses. It's too much. Magneto is a monster. And he's just toying with me. Atomic's thoughts raced as he hurtled through the air, the idea of fleeing into the vastness of space flickering tantalizingly in his mind. With a heavy, disappointed sigh, Eric glanced toward the distant helicopters. I'm growing bored of you, boy, he taunted, pointing a hand at the helicopters hovering precariously. Let's see just how much of a hero you truly are. Atomic's heart sank as a colossal segment of the steel behemoth tore away, morphing into 5 massive javelins, each aimed directly at an unsuspecting helicopter. Horror washed over him in waves. They're going to die. Despair clawed at his insides, the javelins flying through his mind's eye in agonizing slow motion. They won't stand a chance. I can't save them. Atomic thought with despair. As shame surged within him, Atomic turned away, ready to forsake the fight. You're much stronger than you think you are. Trust me. Those words, spoken by the Mun of Tomorrow, resounded in his mind. The very same Mun whose ideals he had sculpted his entire atomic persona from lingered within him, challenging him. Is my conviction so fragile that I abandon it at my first real life-or-death battle? Have the countless days, weeks, and months spent as atomic merely been a facade? Was it all a delusion just to feed my own ego? I'm pathetic. Atomic thought, despair flooding his veins. I'm no hero, just a guy with powers. True heroes leap into danger without hesitation, sacrificing everything to save others. I'm no Superman. Yet then, a spark ignited deep within him. But, opening his eyes, Atomic gazed back up at the hurtling steel javelins, his once dull green eyes now aglow with crimson. Fear had drained away, replaced with unwavering resolve. I am Atomic, he declared, his voice a mighty roar that cut through the chaos. With newfound determination surging through him, he undid his limitless technique. A blinding flash of crimson blazed outward, engulfing the approaching steel monstrosity around Atomic in a pulse of raw power, instantly transforming it into a breathtaking ice sculpture. What is this? Eric exclaimed, shock rippling through his words as he felt his control disappear at the change of matter. Seeing the wave of crimson coming at him, he flew back in a dash. He had this much strength. With new strength surging within him, Atomic burst through the ice with a thunderous crash and shot into the sky. His once cloth cape exploded into a billowing flame of pure white energy, propelling him forward like a comet streaking across the heavens. The sheer force of his flight speed threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed against it with all his might. In the distance, Hughes and his crew operated their helicopter's weapons, unleashing a storm of bullets, rockets, and missiles against the incoming threat. Even as their attacks connected, most javelins zipped through the chaos, too swift and unpredictable for their laser-focused aim. Shit! Hughes yelled, tilting his helicopter away as a javelin missed by mere inches. Suddenly, a beam of red plasma erupted from below, obliterating a steel javelin. Hughes's eyes widened in disbelief as Atomic surged past his helicopter like a streak of lightning. In an awe-inspiring blur, Atomic materialized in front of another javelin, his hands moving with lightning speed. With a surge of red energy, he wrapped the projectile in his power, transforming it into a flurry of soft, harmless feathers that fluttered down to the ground below. Atomic darted back and forth with unyielding focus, dismantling the remaining javelins with breathtaking precision. Each transformation erupted in brilliant bursts of energy, mesmerizing the helicopter pilots and those watching from the ground, their faces illuminated with wonder and disbelief. Exhausted but unbroken, Atomic felt the brilliance of his new burst of inexplicable power begin to vanish, returning him to his usual state. What was that? Where did that power come from? Atomic thought as he tried to regain his breath. Holy crap! Wanda muttered, her eyes wide as she stood frozen, captivated by the spectacle unfolding before her. Such power, Mystique breathed, her voice barely a whisper as she struggled to process the immense energy radiating from the combatants. It was as if a storm had erupted right before her eyes, raw and primal. Remind me never to piss off Atomic, Lance whispered, now fully awake and awestruck. His teammates all nodded in agreement, still trying to grasp the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. Did you see that? That was incredible, one of the younger mutants exclaimed, bouncing on the balls of their feet, a mix of excitement and fear coursing through them. I know, right? Another chimed in, eyes sparkling with adrenaline. It was like watching something out of a movie. That was so scary. But awesome, too, someone else added, their voice trembling slightly, caught between thrill and anxiety as they watched the fight escalate. Around them, the crowd of mutants buzzed with energy, a mix of disbelief and exhilaration filling the air. For Jubilation, Samuel, and Robert, it felt like they were witnessing a celestial event that would be etched into their memories forever. The sounds, the colors, the sheer intensity, it was like observing two gods clash, each blow reverberating through the air and sending ripples of power around them. Amidst the chaos, one of the helicopter pilots, wide-eyed and pale, broke through the stunned silence. Hey, boss, he stammered, his gaze fixed on Atomic soaring through the sky, a brilliant figure against the darkening horizon. I think we should get the hell out of here. Like, right now. His urgent voice snapped others out of their reverie. Hughes, The commanding officer swallowed hard, instinctively scanning the tumultuous scene as fear crept in. Yeah. Let's get the hell out of here. He barked commands to his men, urgency threading through his tone as he ordered them to leave the area as quickly as possible. The brass is going to have a field day with this one. Eric watched as the helicopters vanished, his expression emotionless. He allowed them to slip away, quickly shifting his focus back to Atomic, who was struggling to stay airborne. It was clear that the surge of power he had summoned to save the pilots had completely drained him. You didn't disappoint me, Wyatt. Such incredible potential. You've reached heights most can only dream of in just a year. Eric's lips curled into a predatory grin as he envisioned an adult Atomic wielding unimaginable power, capable of decimating entire cities with a mere flick of his wrist. The thought of a fully realized Atomic, an indomitable force of possibility, sent a sinister chuckle rippling through him. It would be a shame to extinguish such potential, Eric remarked, allowing the concealed spiked steel pillar to crash down with a deafening thud, shaking the ground beneath them. With his hands clasped behind his back, Eric glided toward Atomic, who instinctively tensed. After a moment of hesitation, he raised a hand defensively in a flicking pose. Don't make me use this, Magneto. Atomic thought, a heavy resignation settling in his chest as he prepared for the worst. I still haven't mastered this, but I'm spent. I have to use the last of my energy on this move. I can't let Magneto kill these people. I believe the games are over, Wyatt, Eric said, his smile almost mocking in its warmth. I've reconsidered your fate. Though your ideology is misaligned, I believe it is malleable. One day, you'll see that I was right all along. Fat chance, Atomic shot back. Eric's demeanor shifted slightly. I will give the young mutants a choice. They can join my cause willingly or they can refuse, no coercion. After everything they've endured, many may find my brotherhood's vision enticing. Those who decline, you can take them to Charles if you wish. With that, Eric turned on his heel, ready to depart, but paused to cast a lingering glance over his shoulder. Oh, and take good care of my disobedient daughter. Like you, she'll come to understand one day. Atomic blinked, taken aback by Eric's unexpected civility. The silence stretched between them, thickening with unspoken tension, leaving Atomic unsure how to respond. This is goodbye. At least for now, Eric said, his voice low yet heavy with threat, before soaring off, leaving Atomic grappling with a weight of uncertainty and dread. With his statement made, Eric soared into the sky, hovering over the vast, jagged crater that marked the remains of the MRD facility. Mystique cast one last piercing glare at Wanda before transforming into a majestic hawk, her wings stretching wide as she swooped to join Eric in the air. Eric's gaze lingered on Wanda for several heartbeats, his expression a mix of contemplation and frustration. Unfazed, Wanda raised both hands defiantly, flipping him off with a smirk. With a resigned sigh, Eric turned away and flew toward the throng of mutants gathered in the distance, intent on fulfilling his promise to Atomic. After delivering his message, half of the liberated mutants chose to ally with Eric, while the other half opted for their own paths. Once the chaos subsided, Atomic glided back to the remnants of the facility, landing shakily beside Wanda. As he released the gravitational hold that had aided his flight, he stumbled forward, only to be caught by Wanda's steadying grip. Whoa, easy there, Wanda said, her voice a blend of concern and amusement as she helped steady Atomic. What was that? Why did you and that deadbeat fight? Weren't you two supposed to be working together? We were, Atomic replied, shifting uncomfortably as he settled onto a large chunk of concrete. But that's about the extent of my relationship with Magneto. He paused, pretending to be unaware of the connection between Wanda and Eric. What do you mean by deadbeat? Oh, right. Well, that old bastard is technically my father, biologically speaking, Wanda confessed, taking a seat beside him, her expression a mix of exasperation and resignation. So, deadbeat. I see, Atomic replied, nodding slowly as he processed the revelation. Yeah. Silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the occasional groan from the unconscious agent sprawled nearby. The quiet was abruptly broken by a loud, rumbling growl from Atomic's stomach. Seriously? You just had this epic showdown with that deadbeat, and you're hungry? Wanda asked, a teasing smile curling at the corners of her lips. With a playful glint in his eye, Atomic reached down and picked up a fist-sized rock. In an instant, the rock transformed into a steaming bowl of shrimp fried rice, the mouth-watering aroma wafting into the air. When I use my powers, a lot of the energy comes from my caloric intake, he explained, conjuring a set of gleaming chopsticks as he undid the lower part of his helmet. That's why I make it a point to eat a lot each day. After that fight, I'm practically starving. If I'm going to take everyone out of here, I need to refuel. That's neat, I guess, Wanda said, still bemused by the sight of food materializing out of thin air. Can I have some? With a tired smile, Atomic conjured another pair of chopsticks, offering them to her as the enticing aroma of the shrimp fried rice filled the air, mingling with the remnants of battle. All right, let me make sure I understand this, Samuel said as he and the other mutants who had refused to join Eric stood at the edge of a secluded area of Lake Tahoe. They were no longer dressed in their dull facility jumpsuits. They now wore comfortable, loose clothing created by Atomic. So, you're saying we have two options. We can either go home, where the government would most likely come after us again, or we can go to an institution in upstate New York that protects mutants from the government. Did I get that right? Atomic nodded. I understand that the choices are limited. But as far as the government is concerned, you are all escaped fugitives they will want to recapture. While I know you all want to go home, I don't believe that's the safest choice. But, we've been gone so long, a young girl said, clutching her arm. I miss my mom. Yeah. I want to go home. I'm sick of being placed in places I don't want to be. A chorus of angry voices erupted among the crowd. Tensions were rising as everyone wanted to express their feelings. The noise ceased abruptly when a loud crack echoed from a nearby tree that had been torn down. Wanda's hand stopped glowing as she climbed on top of the fallen tree. Listen. Atomic just fought tooth and nail to free us all. I've been trapped in that place like everyone else, so let me make myself clear, I understand. We all have homes we want to return to. But some of us don't. She said softly, shaking her thoughts away and gaining Atomic's attention. Even if we go home, the government will just come back for us. But what guarantee is there that they won't come for everyone here at this institution? This Charles Xavier guy might have an agreement with the president, but won't harboring them break that? Robert asked Atomic, gesturing to the large gathering. How can you ensure their safety? A chorus of agreements filled the forest. Atomic nodded and turned to everyone. Trust me, my plans to help you all go far beyond just freeing you from that facility. From this point on, things will only get harder from here, but I promise you all, I will fight for your freedoms every step of the way. I will ensure that no mutant will ever again be taken from their home simply for awakening the X gene. You have my word. The forest was bathed in a serene hush as Atomic finished his speech, the echoes of his words lingering in the air like a gentle promise. Shadows from the fire pit flickered playfully among the trees, illuminating hopeful expressions on the faces of the assembled group. What do you mean, things will get harder from here? Jubilation asked. Is it because of this? Robert asked as he brought out his personal phone from his pocket. On his screen flashed dozens of news articles from a wide array of news organizations spanning the country, each accompanied by vivid images and striking headlines that demanded attention. Amidst the clutter of information, several headlines stood out boldly, emblazoned across the pages in dark, commanding letters, drawing the reader in like moths to a flame. Yet, despite their varied tones and angles, they all revolved around a singular, controversial figure. Atomic, hero or terrorist? New York's local hero, Atomic, strikes back, attacks U.S. government research facility. Urgent calls for the immediate arrest and capture of Atomic from the DOJ and law enforcement agencies nationwide. The United States Supreme Court issues a mandate. Atomic must appear before the Senate Judiciary Panel to answer for his crimes. That was fast. Too fast. Atomic thought as he read over the headlines with acceptance. That's exactly right, he murmured, his voice low but steady. If I want to ensure that the government no longer goes after innocent mutants, I have to show everyone the atrocities the MRD and the U.S. government have committed against you all. When I stand before the world at Capitol Hill, that's when I'll reveal all the everything I've seen. Everything. They won't be able to hide once it's all out in the open. But how do you plan to do that? Isn't it just going to be your word against theirs? Wanda asked. A knowing smile cracked beneath Atomic's helmet, a spark of confidence shining through. Trust me. It'll be their word against their own. Around the lake, everyone was filled with a mix of anticipation and hope as they took in Atomic's words. While some skepticism still flickered within them, a wave of collective hope washed over the mutants. They had little choice but to believe in the hero, because in the end, that was all they could do. With the remaining embers of hope within them, they decided to believe in Atomic. But until the fateful day when Atomic would step onto the steps of Capitol Hill, ready to unveil the truths hidden by the MRD, they all would embrace the safety of Charles Xavier's school for gifted youngsters until the day they could be truly free arrived. Wait, so how are we all supposed to travel across the country to get to this school? Last I checked, I don't think they allow fugitives to buy plane tickets, Jubilation said. Atomic grinned under his helmet and turned to the Grand Lake beside them. Holding his hands out, he closed his eyes and focused. Everyone watched in awe as a brilliant light shone over the lake. Pulses rippled across the water surface as the lake rose and transformed into a massive, concentrated object. With one final flash of crimson light, an elongated version of the X-Men's Blackbird, made of pure energy, flew above the lake. Did he just make a plane? Samuel whispered in disbelief. I think he did, Jubilation nodded, rubbing her eyes. Yup. That's a plane. This isn't a real plane, Atomic explained. I just reconstructed and repurposed one I scanned a while back, and recreated it using my own energy. It's taking a lot of my brainpower to keep it tangible, but it will hold strong until I get you all to the mansion. With that, he commanded his glowing Blackbird closer. With a thought, the side of the jet opened up, and a set of stairs extended down in front of the group of mutants. Everyone have their plane tickets? Atomic joked. With childlike excitement, everyone quickly stepped inside the grand jet and looked around in awe. As they climbed aboard, they all touched every surface in the rows of seats, marveling at how real and tangible everything felt. Wanda stepped beside Atomic and watched as her fellow mutants boarded the plane. I'm starting to wonder if there's anything you can't do, she said. There's a lot I can't do, Atomic replied, glancing down at the urn floating beside him. But that doesn't mean I won't try my best. Wanda nodded and looked at John's ashes. You're a weird guy. But you're a good person. You remind me a lot of my father. My real father. He was a good man, like you. Was. Atomic whispered. He died. He and my mother died in a boating accident 2 years ago, Wanda admitted quietly. Not long after that, I found a letter in my mother's closet while packing away her things. The letter said that I had a brother in the United States. I had family here. It's why I decided to move here, only to be locked up as soon as I landed when my abilities awakened. I'm sorry, Atomic said softly. It's okay. Well, not really. I'm still furious that they kept me locked up for a year, but at least I'm free now, Wanda smiled as the last person boarded the jet. Do you remember that favor you owe me? Yeah. I want to help. I want to be like you, Wanda said, her voice a whisper as she stared at her glowing hands, a mix of hope and uncertainty washing over her. The flickering images of Atomic surface memories of him saving lives and coming to the aid of those in distress played in her mind, each one sharper than the last. My father always told me my destiny wasn't meant to be spent in our little town in Sokovia. He believed I was destined for something greater, something better. I sometimes wondered if he only said that because he knew that my biological father was a powerful mutant, or if he dreamed of a brighter life for me. I guess I'll never know. But what I do know, deep in my heart, is that I want to use these abilities of mine to help others. To save those like myself from people who want to hurt them. I want to become the person my parents always envisioned me to be. She added that her once dull eyes were now bright and electric. Atomic nodded as he listened, absorbing her words without interruption. This Wanda was vastly different from her MCU counterpart or any other version of her that he's seen in his other lifetime. Sure, she looked like her on-screen MCU counterpart, but her personality and mindset were utterly different, likely due to being raised by two loving, kind-natured parents. Ultimately, it didn't matter why she was who she was. This Wanda was her own person, and she wanted to forge her own path away from hatred and Eric. That, Atomic could respect. After all, he was still forging his own path as well. After a moment of consideration, Atomic nodded. With a thought, He altered the windows in the jet so no one could see outside. In a flash, he removed his helmet and smiled at Wanda. "I'm probably not the best person for the job, but if you're fine with me, I'd be happy to help you, Wanda," Wyatt said, extending his hand. "I'm Wyatt. Wyatt Wilkins. New York's local hero and now terrorist." Wanda blinked as she took in his appearance, and after a moment, she chuckled and shook his hand. In an astonishing and bewildering turn of events, New York's cherished superhero, Atomic, has found himself branded a terrorist by the U.S. government. This shocking turn of events has ignited a fervent firestorm of outrage, disbelief, and confusion across the nation, leaving many to grapple with the implications. Emerging reports have detailed a harrowing incident in which Atomic, along with several alleged accomplices, orchestrated a devastating assault on a high-security government research facility located in Nevada. This facility was reportedly at the forefront of developing groundbreaking cures for deadly diseases, including cancer and Alzheimer's. The scale of the destruction and the unknown motivations behind the attack have raised urgent questions and fears, sending shockwaves rippling through communities nationwide. As the news spread, the atmosphere in New York City, a city that once celebrated Atomic as a symbol of justice and courage, quickly descended into chaos. The streets have been flooded with police, FBI agents, SHIELD agents, and military personnel, all engaged in a frantic manhunt for the once revered figure whose past deeds of heroism are now being scrutinized under a harsh light. Tension permeates the air, with citizens gathered in public squares, their chants for Atomic's arrest reverberating ominously against the city skyline. Graphic news footage has depicted the aftermath of what authorities allege was Atomic's rampage, a massive crater, now a haunting reminder of the destruction in the place that had been a beacon of hope for future cures for countless individuals. As one news anchor solemnly noted, as we feared, his facade as a superhero concealed a darker reality. His heroism was merely a front, a ruse designed to mask his real intentions. Similar news stations and media outlets have galvanized public sentiment, framing Atomic as a symbol of betrayal and a stark warning against unchecked power. The media frenzy has been relentless, with headlines splashing across screens and newspapers detailing the fallout. In a press conference that captured the nation's attention, the president's press secretary, Gregory Key, unveiled distressing images and video footage of the defaced research facility. What was once a facility dedicated to the betterment of humanity now lies in ruins, he asserted, emphasizing the extent of the damage. This tragedy stands as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by those who wield power without accountability, his words further polarizing public opinion. Responses from the public have ranged from outrage to deep skepticism. Voices have erupted across various platforms, echoing the sentiment of betrayal. A popular radio show host couldn't contain his incredulity, exclaiming, "Can you believe it? We were duped. I can't fathom how we ever trusted him. To think he could destroy years of research just like that." Others joined in, echoing concern that the hero Atomic had been a carefully crafted facade, engineered to lower public defenses before he unleashed his deep-seated contempt onto the public. The emotional toll of these events has also been profound. A visibly distraught mother in Brooklyn expressed her heartache while speaking to a gathered crowd. "What am I supposed to tell my children now that their idol has been labeled a terrorist?" she lamented. Her words resonated with many, highlighting the deep implications the scandal has had on families who once looked up to Atomic as a hero. In sharp contrast, a vocal minority has pushed back against what they perceive as a hasty rush to judgment. A prominent podcaster pondered aloud in a widely shared episode. Why is this so-called research facility only coming to light now? Why would Atomic attack it if it was supposedly working on life-saving cures? Her probing question suggested a growing skepticism of the official narrative, with some supporters suggesting that the images released lacked concrete evidence directly linking Atomic to the alleged attack besides a few blurry shots of the hero flying in the air. In Harlem, a group of supporters rallied around a well-respected community leader who declared passionately, "Something is off here. Atomic is one of the good ones, someone who has genuinely looked out for our community, especially when the police have failed us." His words sparked fervent agreement among his peers, encapsulating the belief that Atomic represents a counterbalance to a government they feel has historically marginalized their voices. Community leaders are also weighing in on the controversy, addressing the ramifications of labeling Atomic as a terrorist. Stephanie Delgado, a prominent voice in Manhattan, stated, "Atomic is far more than a mere superhero. He embodies hope, strength, and resilience for our city. By labeling him a terrorist, we undermine everything he's done for us." We need to be cautious about taking everything the government and media are saying about him as fact. In a surprising turn, Emma Frost, the ambitious and influential CEO of Frost International, has also joined the debate. Standing confidently in a pristine white suit outside her newly launched building, she urged restraint and judgment. I refuse to believe Atomic is guilty without hearing his side of the story. He deserves a platform to defend himself and the chance to prove his innocence at the Capitol Hill hearing this Friday, she asserted, emphasizing the need for justice and reason amid the chaos. Her rising influence urged the public to consider the nuances of the situation, igniting heated discussions about the roles of justice and media in shaping public perception. As the hearing looms closer, passions are flaring on both sides of the debate. Will Atomic rise to defend his name and regain his status as a hero, or will this mark the tragic end for a figure once viewed with admiration? Amidst a tumultuous backdrop where conflicting narratives vie for supremacy, the fragile thread of truth hangs precariously in the balance. As the days unfurl leading up to the pivotal hearing, tensions simmer and emotions run high, poised to shape the destiny of the once-beloved hero who stands at the crossroads of fate. How long are we going to ignore the elephant in the room? Serena asked as she and Wyatt sat at a table outside a small coffee shop. You're right. When were you going to tell me your cousin was teaching you karate? Wyatt said with a small smile and took a sip of his iced coffee. Serena's flat expression caused Wyatt's smile to fade. It's not true, you know. What they're saying, I did, he said. I know, Serena quickly said. What I want to know is what you're going to do about it. Are you really going to show up to the hearing in Washington? Yes, I am, Wyatt said and looked out at the surrounding area. Unlike his home city in New York, the streets in the Valley, California, were much larger and less populated. Even so, life moved on along the sidewalks and streets. What I did in Nevada, it's not over yet. Not by a long shot. Serena nodded and rubbed the built-up precipitation on her cup. Can you tell me what happened? Wyatt took another sip of his drink and nodded. Quietly and carefully, he gave Serena a quick summary of why and what had happened in Nevada, the government kidnapping innocent mutants, the secret Nevada facility that kept mutants under lock and key, and his subsequent infiltration and extraction of the captives and his fight with Eric. Wow, that's a lot, Serena said. Yeah. I like to stay busy, Wyatt chuckled dryly and rubbed the back of his head. I guess I can see why you're avoiding New York now. It must be hectic over there right now. I feel terrible that the city is under a state of emergency. But I can't be there right now. I don't want the people there to get caught up in the middle of whatever organization is trying to catch me. I'm sure they'll use everything in their power to capture me. I can't risk anyone getting hurt because they got caught in the crossfire, Wyatt said and finished his drink. Discreetly, he refilled his drink, much to Serena's exasperation. You're still drinking too much coffee, you know, Serena said with a playful smile, hoping to shift the focus away from Wyatt's ongoing troubles. I thought you were going to cut back a little. She watched him for a moment, gauging his reaction, and then her eyes lit up with a sudden inspiration. Hey, I have a great idea. How about I take you to the Miyagi-Do dojo where Daniel trains me? It's such a beautiful place. I think you'll really love it. With that, Serena stood up, her enthusiasm contagious, and reached for Wyatt's hand. As they stepped out together, she began to guide him through the vibrant streets of the valley. The sun streamed down, casting warm shadows on the sidewalk, and the air was alive with the sounds of laughter and the distant hum of music. She pointed out the little cafe where she and her new friends grabbed pastries and the park where kids often played, weaving in stories from her new life in California as they walked. It was the perfect distraction, and she hoped it would lift his spirits as they made their way to the dojo. Wyatt's jaw tightened as he gripped the door handle to his hotel room, pausing for just a heartbeat. He narrowed his eyes, his instincts on high alert. With a deep breath to steady himself, he pushed the door open and stepped inside with an expression that appeared relaxed and unsuspecting. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, he tossed his room key and phone onto a small table. Placing the takeout bag he bought on a nearby table, he let out a tired groan that escaped his lips as he pulled off his red and white hoodie, but the sound that followed, a soft squeak, made him freeze. You know, I've been meaning to come and meet you myself. Nick Fury's voice cut through the silence, his tone as intimidating as Wyatt had imagined. He lounged in a large recliner chair while the shadows kept his figure hidden. Coulson put in a good word for you, so I stayed away. but you and a group of mutants just had to go and destroy a major government facility. Despite the situation, Wyatt's heart remained calm at the sight of Nick Fury. He let out a pulse that rippled through the walls of the hotel, confirming that there were no hidden agents lying in wait. Still, this was Nick Fury. Even if the Mun was technically powerless, he wasn't one to be underestimated. "You don't seem surprised to see me," Nick said, his eyes glinting with a challenge. "Yeah, well, when the entire country wants to take you in, you figure someone with decent skills is bound to find me sooner or later," Wyatt replied, leaning against the door. "So, you know Coulson. I'm guessing you're part of S.H.I.E.L.D. too." "I'm not part of S.H.I.E.L.D. I am S.H.I.E.L.D., Fury said, rising from the chair, his presence filling the room with authority. "Nick Fury, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Let me make this clear, you're in a world of trouble, son. Powerful people want you in custody. I trust Coulson, so when he said you could be trusted, I believed him. But you need to give me a damn good reason not to drag you in kicking and screaming." Wyatt's mouth twitched slightly upward. "You do realize that no prison can really hold me, right?" He strolled toward the duffel bag in the corner, every movement calculated, aware of Fury's piercing gaze locking onto him. "I'm guessing you've already gone through my stuff, but I made sure to keep this to myself." He fished out a flash drive from his pants pocket, the small device feeling heavier than it should. He set a laptop on the table, his fingers flying across the keys as he booted it up, the tension thick enough to slice through with a knife. "What do you really know about that research facility in Nevada that I allegedly destroyed?" Wyatt asked, plugging in the flash drive with little concern. Nick blinked, momentarily caught off guard by Wyatt's nonchalance and sarcasm. "Go off the assumption that I know nothing. Enlighten me." Wyatt wanted to roll his eyes, exasperation flickering across his face for a second, but the oppressive weight of Nick's penetrating gaze pressed down on him, demanding answers. His fingers danced over the laptop's keys, entering an intricate sequence of characters that no normal human could remember to unlock the flash drive. After what felt like an eternity, he finally turned the laptop around. The dim glow of the screen illuminated Nick's sharp features as he stared at the avalanche of files and images unfurling before his lone eye. What Nick discovered were not merely documents. They constituted a tapestry of secrets, revealing a scarred history of everything the so-called research facility, which in reality was a mutant prison camp run by the MRD, had been conducting in the shadows in the guise of creating an army of super soldiers. The horrors of their cruel treatment and experimentation on mutants were laid bare. Nick's single eye widened almost imperceptibly, disbelief flickering within him as he began to scroll through the countless atrocities captured in pixelated fragments. Nick had known that the U.S. government, under the command of General Greller, had been taking emerging mutants away to secure facilities in order to prevent another catastrophe, but he hadn't been aware that the children that were being captured were subjected to inhuman testing and borderline torture. He was led to believe by his superiors that the mutant situation was well under control by the U.S. government. That they were taking the extra steps to help regulate and train any new mutants to control their abilities to avoid another Sasha Connor incident. But to think such egregious acts had been occurring under his watch as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. left Nick in utter disappointment at himself. He should have dug deeper into the MRD and the Nevada facility. With a heavy sigh escaping his lips, Nick slowly closed the laptop, his expression shifting from anger to acceptance. "When do you plan on releasing this?" "The morning of my hearing," Wyatt replied, his voice steady. Unshakable. "The world needs to know the truth. They need to know what really happened in Nevada, the families they ripped apart, the lives they disregarded. It has to end. I will end it." Nick placed his hands on his hips, narrowing his lone eye as he processed this revelation. "I can't believe this all happened under my nose. How?" The question hung in the air, laced with disbelief, mostly directed inward. Wyatt closed his eyes for a moment, a frown creasing his brow. "I think I know why. It's because Hydra is involved," he thought, his stomach sinking at the realization. The implications of this connection sent a shiver down his spine. Should I tell him? No, I can't. Not without any substantial proof. Damn it. "You can't blame yourself, Director," Wyatt offered, his voice calm but firm. "What matters now is finding a way to ensure that this never happens again." As he spoke, he felt the intensity of the moment shift. There was so much at stake. "While I'm sure the evidence I gathered is substantial enough, I could always use more help." Nick had always prided himself on being the best spy in S.H.I.E.L.D., a master of stealth and strategy, slipping through the shadows like a ghost. His training and instincts had honed him into a figure who was always one step, if not 10, ahead of everyone around him. Each mission he undertook solidified his reputation. His cunning and resourcefulness were legendary among the organization. Yet today, the stark daylight of reality was casting harsh shadows on his pride, revealing cracks he had never noticed before. He had always trusted his instincts, but now, they felt like treacherous whispers, warning him that there were forces at play far beyond his control and knowledge. There's more at play here. There's no way all this could have been kept away from me. Not unless there's someone at the top who made sure I never found out. Nick thought grimly. With renewed resolve, Nick stepped toward Wyatt, extending his hand. Wyatt met him with a small, determined smile as their hands clasped firmly. "Talk me through your game plan," Nick said, his voice a low growl, determination etched into every syllable. The streets of New York City buzzed with an undercurrent of anxiety, a palpable tension hanging in the air as police vehicles, government officials, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and the National Guard patrolled every corner. Once buoyed by hope and a sense of safety, the citizens now navigated their neighborhoods with trepidation, their everyday lives overshadowed by an unsettling unease. Despite the extensive presence of law enforcement, crime rates surged alarmingly, creating an atmosphere thick with desperation. Atomic, the red and white hero who had once stood as a beacon of justice, faced accusations that tarnished his name in the eyes of both the public and authorities. The media frenzy painted him as a threat rather than a protector, which only emboldened the city's criminal element. His absence was deeply felt, and the shadows that once trembled at his mere presence were now filled with brazen criminals roaming the streets, undeterred by fear. The week-long disappearance of Atomic intensified the already rampant criminal activity. Police forces, stretched thin by the dual demands of searching for their missing hero, now terrorist, and managing the escalating crime wave, found themselves overwhelmed. Reports of violent confrontations and gang-related incidents flooded the precincts, leaving officers frustrated and desperate. With their ranks divided and with morale dwindling, the thin blue line meant to protect the city appeared dangerously close to breaking. Yet, hope flickered in the form of a diverse group of individuals stepping forward. A coalition of established heroes and newcomers united against the rising tide of lawlessness. Figures like Spider-Man swung through the skyline, his bright red, blue, and white costume sending criminals running. Daredevil prowled darkened alleys with heightened senses, seeking justice for the voiceless, and Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, initially skeptical of Atomic's motives, recognized that their city needed protection and were ready to fight for it. Iron Fist brought his martial prowess, while White Tiger, driven by a sense of responsibility, joined the fray. Even Tony Stark, in his guise as Iron Man, carved out time from his demanding schedule to lend a hand against the escalating chaos. Some of these heroes, having chosen to live among ordinary citizens, had initially turned a blind eye to the struggles around them. However, as crime encroached upon their own communities, they realized that inaction was no longer an option. Without Atomic to maintain order, the streets that had once felt safe became battlegrounds of fear and desperation. Ordinary New Yorkers also played their part, inspired by Atomic's compassion and selflessness. Many, though lacking superhuman abilities, rallied together to protect their neighborhoods, organizing watch groups and outreach programs to support those in need. They understood that every small act of kindness could serve as a beacon of hope amidst the chaos, echoing Atomic's legacy of heroism. Still, each day represented a daunting challenge. The protective aura that Atomic had enveloped the city in was now a distant memory. With his departure, a new breed of criminal emerged, equipped with advanced technology, lethal weaponry, and even superhuman abilities. They seized the opportunity to further their malicious goals, emboldened by the vacuum created by Atomic's absence. Sinister figures lurked in the shadows, waiting to exploit the turmoil. Wilson Fisk, the shadowy kingpin of crime, sought to expand his influence over the city's underbelly. Norman Osborn, with his own ambitious agenda, orchestrated chaos from behind the scenes. And the Hand, a secretive and ancient organization of ninjas, planned to increase their influence during this tumultuous period. These nefarious entities were undeterred by the potential for collateral damage and were motivated solely by their grand ambitions for power and control. One thought permeated every mind, whether heroic or villainous. The upcoming hearing on Capitol Hill regarding Atomic would be a pivotal moment. As the world tuned in to witness the proceedings, the outcome of his judgment would ripple through the fabric of New York's future, influencing the fate of its citizens and the delicate balance between good and evil. With his court date in Washington looming ominously tomorrow afternoon, Wyatt wandered through the bustling streets of Burbank, feeling somewhat aimless. Clad in a black outfit that matched his turbulent mood, he observed the vibrant city life unfolding around him, a stark contrast to the chaos that had consumed his own life. Every passerby carried their own story, immersed in the mundane: an elderly couple holding hands, a group of teenagers laughing as they shared ice cream, and a businessman buried in his phone. Wyatt found solace in watching them, even as the weight of his own reality pressed down heavily on his shoulders. For the first time in his short but arduous career as a superhero, Wyatt was granted a reprieve, a welcome week of respite from the relentless duties that had always defined him. Yet the irony of this brief vacation was not lost on him. It stemmed from the fact that he was now branded a terrorist, relentlessly hunted by those he once sought to protect. The very city that had once celebrated him now cast a shadow of suspicion on his every movement. Even while trying to savor this unexpected freedom, Wyatt couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility gnawing at him. In New York, hundreds of discreet cameras that he had strategically placed throughout the city remained hidden in plain sight. With the help of his AI, Eve, he stayed vigilant, tracking the chaos he had inadvertently sparked. Guilt seeped into him as he reflected on the turmoil his actions had unleashed, knowing that many of his fellow heroes were now left to pick up the pieces of a fractured city. However, a flicker of hope nestled within his heart. Wyatt clung to the belief that once the court proceedings concluded, the turbulence and crime that had escalated in New York following his revelations would gradually subside, restoring a sense of normalcy to a broken society. Yet he was acutely aware that only time would reveal whether his bold declarations would resonate positively with the world or further entrench fear and animosity. Wyatt was no fool. He understood the complexities of human nature. He knew that within the hearts of many lingered a dark fear of the unknown, a persistent belief that mutants were fundamentally dangerous. But amidst that darkness, he believed there lay a growing number of individuals who would choose to see mutants not as monstrous aberrations but as fellow beings deserving of empathy and understanding. It was this hope that fueled his resolve, guiding him through the uncertainty that lay ahead. "It's hard being hopeful in a world like this," Wyatt said as he reached a skate park. He turned his head and watched as a few skateboarders performed their tricks and rode the halfpipes. But something else caught his eye. Far off in the corner of the skate park was a small gathering of teenagers. 3 girls and 2 boys surrounded a single girl, trapping her in front of a wall with their bodies. Without thinking about it, Wyatt began walking towards them. "EW. Do you seriously still listen to these has-beens? Their songs are, like, not even that good." One of the girls, the main ringleader, Ellie, said as she held a graphic notebook with a picture of one of Korea's famous idol groups, the Sunshine Sisters. Zoe, a 16-year-old girl with black hair styled in twin-braided buns and microbangs, shrank into herself as she continued to stare at the ground, feeling isolated by the group around Ellie. Opening the notebook she took from Zoe, Ellie laughed as she flipped through its pages. "What's this? Lyrics? Don't tell me you think you're going to be a songwriter." Ellie's group all laughed at her words. "Yeah, it is pretty stupid." Zoe gave off a weak laugh as her hands balled up tightly beside her. From a young age, Zoe felt the weight of not fitting in. Born in the vibrant streets of South Korea and later moving to the sun-drenched town of Burbank, California, she often felt like a stranger in her own life, unable to find a community where she truly belonged. Yet, amid the isolation, there was one constant source of solace: the music of the Sunshine Sisters. Their melodies wrapped around her like a warm hug, offering moments of peace and happiness that helped her forget her worries and fears. The uplifting rhythms and heartfelt lyrics ignited a passion for music within her, sending her on a quest to explore every genre with a compelling beat. California's lively street culture introduced her to the exhilarating world of rap battles, where the energy and creativity of the performers captivated her spirit like nothing else. At school, however, Zoe's unique interests and her struggle to connect with others made her an easy target for those seeking to bully her. Her love of music, which might have brought her closer to others, instead set her apart, painting her as an outsider. Among her tormentors was Ellie, the high school queen bee, who used her popularity to make Zoe's life even more difficult. Ellie's sharp tongue and relentless teasing felt like constant reminders of Zoe's loneliness, amplifying the heartache she tried so hard to overcome. "Great. So you wouldn't mind if I just..." Ellie lifted up Zoe's notebook and began to tear page after page out, much to Zoe's silent horror. "No." Zoe muttered as she watched each page she filled with her thoughts and beats fall to the ground. The laughter of Ellie's friends filled Zoe's ears as Ellie continued to rip her notebook to pieces. "That's enough. Wyatt stepped in and snatched Zoe's notebook from Ellie's hands, surprising her group with how quickly and silently he moved. Ellie hissed and turned to glare at Wyatt but paused as her eyes landed on him. She instinctively took a step back, her dilapidated human instincts warning her of the presence Wyatt exuded. But just as quickly as that feeling emerged, it vanished. Shaking her head, Ellie growled, "Give that back." "Sorry, but this doesn't belong to you. Does it?" Wyatt replied, his tone easy and relaxed. "Who the hell do you think you are, shithead?" One of the guys in Ellie's group, Stan, said as he and his friend Gerald moved closer to Wyatt. Ellie and her two other friends smiled, feeling superior as Stan and Gerald loomed over Wyatt. "Don't you know who we are?" "To me, you all look like a bunch of bullies," Wyatt said, remaining unbothered. Like a deer caught in headlights, Zoe could only watch as her unexpected savior prepared to face off against her high school star quarterbacks. Without another word, Stan lunged forward and threw a wide punch at Wyatt, who deftly sidestepped the attack, causing Stan to stumble forward. With a growl, Gerald launched several awkward punches at Wyatt. As he did so, Wyatt noticed that Gerald was getting increasingly close to stepping on Zoe's torn pages. Ducking under a wild haymaker, Wyatt moved into Gerald's space, making the teen gasp. With a firm grip, Wyatt seized Gerald's wrist, spun him around, and pushed him into Ellie and her two other friends. Hearing rushing footsteps, Wyatt leaned to the side as Stan tried to sucker punch the back of his head. Wyatt's hand shot up, quickly using Stan's outstretched arm to pull him into an over-the-shoulder flip. It was a maneuver Wyatt had experienced dozens of times against Logan. Gerald moved in and checked on the groaning Stan, whose face looked up at the relaxed expression Wyatt held as he looked down at him. With a gulp, Gerald helped his friend to his feet and rushed out of the skate park. Seeing their only muscle leaving, a nervous Ellie quickly followed, as did her two other friends. "We won't forget this," Ellie yelled over her shoulder. However, the stares from the other skate park visitors caused her to blush in embarrassment. With one final glare, she and her group ran away. That was so cool. Like a switch, Zoe's once withdrawn, turtle-like behavior turned off, revealing a more hyperactive side. This momentarily threw Wyatt for a loop. "Are you, like, a ninja or something? Or was that karate?" she exclaimed before her eyes landed on her torn papers. The sight of her hard work ruined and strewn about instantly deflated her excitement. "Oh." Wyatt gave Zoe a small smile and bent down to gather the torn pages. "I'm Wyatt. It's nice to meet you." "Ah, right. I'm Zoe," she said, mustering a small smile. "Thanks for helping me. But you probably shouldn't have done that. They're not going to forget what you did to them." "I'm not worried about them. How about you? Are you okay?" Wyatt asked as he placed each torn page back in the correct order within the notebook. "I'm fine," Zoe said with a forced smile, her eyes landing on the notebook. "You can stop. You don't have to do that. The book's ruined." "I wouldn't say that," Wyatt smiled as he stood up. "Do you like magic tricks, Zoe?" "Magic? Yeah, I guess so," Zoe replied, tilting her head. With exaggerated motion, Wyatt pulled out a large red handkerchief from his back pocket and placed it over Zoe's notebook. With a swift use of his powers, he mended the pages back together. "Abracadabra," he announced with a flourish, pulling the handkerchief away to reveal the notebook, which was now intact. Zoe took it with a sad smile. "I appreciate you trying to cheer me up, but—" Zoe began, only to gasp as she opened her notebook, seeing that it was back together with no damage in sight. "No way!" she screamed with a happy squeal. "How did you do that?" "Sorry, a magician never reveals his secrets," Wyatt said with a bow. He was glad to see Zoe's mood brighten. "Oh my God! You really are a magician!" Zoe exclaimed in Korean, her eyes wide with excitement. "I wouldn't call myself a magician. Otherwise, the people of the Sanctum Sanctorum might sue me," Wyatt replied, also in Korean, shocking Zoe even more. "You speak Korean?" Zoe jumped in happiness. "It's a bit rough, but yeah," he admitted. "Oh. I know this great place that makes the best kimbap in the city. My treat," Zoe said, speaking English once more, grabbing her backpack and skateboard from where they leaned against the wall. Let's go, let's go." She grabbed Wyatt's arm and dragged him out of the park. Oh, okay. Wyatt muttered as Zoe pulled him through the streets of Burbank. Despite the unexpected turn of events, Wyatt wore a soft smile as Zoe chatted away. Deep inside, he felt grateful for Zoe's presence and happy disposition. It was a welcome distraction from his hearing at Capitol Hill tomorrow. Hey, can I have that handkerchief? Sure thing.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.